It was close to midnight when dispatch sent me out to mile marker 79. A stalled vehicle, no driver in sight, engine still running. Standard welfare check, they said, but the way the dispatcher's voice trailed off before hanging up. Something in it felt uneasy. The highway out there is long and empty. I've been on that stretch more times than I can count. No gas stations for 20 miles, no streetlights, no houses, just flat asphalt slicing through desert hills. The kind of place where you start to hear your own thoughts too loud. I rolled down my window as I drove, letting the cold air hit my face. My cruiser's headlights cut through the dark in a narrow beam. Everything outside that light felt like another world, just endless black. The radio crackled now and then, but mostly it was quiet. Too quiet. I passed mile marker 78, then slowed down. One more mile. I kept scanning the shoulder for any sign of taillights. And then I saw it. A silver sedan, parked at an angle on the gravel shoulder. Engine still running. Exhaust curling faintly in the cold air. I pulled over behind it and stepped out. The night hit me hard, colder than I expected. The air smelled like dust and oil. The only sound was the hum of the sedan's engine and the faint clicking of the cooling metal. "Highway patrol," I called out, shining my flashlight into the driver's window. No movement. The inside looked empty. Front seat, back seat, nothing. I circled the car, checking the plates, the tires. No damage, no sign of an accident. But something about the scene didn't add up. Driver's door was locked. Passenger side unlocked. I leaned in and called again, louder this time. "Hello? This is the highway patrol. Anyone here?" Silence. I reached in and shifted the car into park, then turned off the ignition. The engine sputtered once before dying. The headlights faded, leaving me in near total darkness, except for my cruiser's lights flashing behind me. Red and blue reflections danced across the silver hood like something breathing. I noticed then the driver's seat was pushed all the way back, too far for anyone shorter than 6 feet to reach the pedals. And on the passenger seat, there was a phone. Screen cracked, still glowing faintly. A 911 call log open on the screen. I felt a small chill crawl up my spine. The timestamp said 11:47 p.m. That was less than 10 minutes ago. Whoever made that call must have been here when dispatch got it. I checked the ground around the car. Footprints, fresh ones, leading away from the vehicle, out toward the ditch on the right side of the road. I followed them with my light. The tracks went on for maybe 20 yards, and then just stopped. No sign of turning back, no sign of a struggle, just gone. I crouched down, ran my fingers along the last print. It was sharp-edged, pressed deep. Whoever it was had been walking fast, maybe even running. The night wind started to pick up, low and steady. It made the dry grass along the shoulder rustle softly, almost like whispering. For a second, I thought I heard something else in it, a voice, but it was gone before I could tell what it said. I stood there scanning the desert. The highway stretched straight ahead, miles of blacktop vanishing into the dark. To my left, flat sand. To my right, a shallow drainage ditch, then the rise of low hills. No movement anywhere. I keyed my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I'm at the scene of that 1025 at mile marker 79. Vehicle's unoccupied. Engine was still running." "Copy? Static, I tried again." "Dispatch, come in." More static. The signal must have been weak out here, but usually I'd still get a crackle of a response. This time, nothing. I started to feel the first flicker of real unease. You don't realize how alone you are on the highway until the radio dies. That connection, gone, and suddenly it's just you in the dark. I decided to pop the trunk, thinking maybe there'd be a clue. When I did, the hinge creaked loud enough to make me flinch. Inside was a small red gas can, half full. A blanket and a child's car seat. It looked unused, still strapped tight in the corner. No dirt, no stains. Brand new. I don't know why, but something about seeing that car seat out here made the whole scene feel heavier. Like I'd walked into someone's story halfway through and missed the part that explained everything. I closed the trunk and leaned against the car, trying to piece it together. If someone ran off into the desert, I needed to find them fast. Cold like this, they wouldn't last long. I grabbed my flashlight tighter and started toward the hills. The beam swept over rocks and brush, catching small shapes. Twigs, animal tracks, empty soda cans. Then for just a second, I saw something else. A shape standing still, far out near the slope. Looked like a person. I froze. Lifted the light again. Gone. I blinked, took a few slow breaths. Maybe it was a shadow, a bush, my eyes playing tricks. That happens out here. You stare too long into darkness and your brain starts filling in the blanks. But then I heard it. From far off, a sound like metal scraping against metal. Slow, rhythmic. I followed it without thinking. Each step crunching softly on gravel. The sound kept going, steady, like someone dragging something across the ground. When I reached the base of the hill, it stopped. I waited, barely breathing. Only the wind, only my heartbeat in my ears. And then my flashlight flickered. Just once, and when it came back, something was different. The car. It was back on. I turned around, shining the light down the road. From where I stood, I could see the faint glow of the sedan's headlights again, spilling onto the asphalt. I knew I'd shut that car off. I was sure of it. I started walking back fast. Each step felt longer than the last. The closer I got, the louder the engine sounded, like it was straining, revving without anyone inside. When I reached it, I called out again, almost yelling. "Hello, who's in there?" No answer. I pulled open the driver's door. Empty. Keys were still in the ignition. Seat still pushed all the way back, but the radio was on now. Static. Loud, distorted, broken by a faint voice I couldn't make out. I leaned closer. The voice sounded like a woman's. Just fragments. Can't find. Mile 70. Please, someone. I reached for the dial to turn it down, and the voice stopped. Silence again. Even the static was gone. The air inside the car felt strange, heavy, like it had been sealed too long. There was a faint smell, sweet and metallic like blood after it's dried. I stepped back, heart pounding. The desert was dead quiet again. Even the wind had stopped. I didn't realize until then that my hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly, more like confusion. Or that feeling when the world stops behaving the way it's supposed to. I looked down the road again, hoping to see another set of headlights. Backup, a truck, anything. But the highway stayed empty. I tried the radio one more time. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Do you copy?" For a moment, nothing. Then a faint click. And a voice I didn't recognize came through, slow and distant. "Unit 12, you're not supposed to be there." I froze. The voice wasn't my dispatcher. Didn't even sound like it was coming from my channel. It was softer, almost tired. "Who is this?" I asked. The radio crackled once, then died again. I stood there for a long time after that. The red and blue lights from my cruiser painted the road in slow pulses, over and over like a heartbeat I could see. And for the first time in years on the force, I didn't know what to do next. I checked the phone again before I left. The 911 log was still open. But now, there was a new line beneath it. Call ended. 11:59 p.m. The strange part? My watch said 11:47. Time hadn't moved at all. When I got back into the cruiser, I sat there for a minute, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard on the radio. That voice, the one that told me I wasn't supposed to be there. It didn't sound real. It sounded like someone trying to remember how to speak. Flat, careful, like every word was being built from the ground up. I kept thinking maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the signal bounced, maybe I picked up a stray transmission. That happens sometimes out here. But deep down I knew better. The silver sedan was still idling, engine humming steady. It shouldn't have been. I'd turned it off myself, but I didn't want to touch it again. Something about it felt wrong now. It didn't just look abandoned, it felt occupied. I opened the passenger door, slow, my flashlight trembling slightly in my hand. The phone was still there. Cracked screen glowing pale blue. The 911 call still active. A soft, rhythmic hiss coming through the speaker, like someone breathing on the other end. I picked it up. "Hello?" I said quietly. "This is Officer Daniel Holt with Highway Patrol." "Who am I speaking to?" No answer. Just that faint, uneven breathing, then a sound, soft like fabric shifting. And a whisper. "Not clear, not close. Just barely there. Don't hang up." I froze. The words were so faint I almost thought they came from behind me. But they were coming from the phone. "Through the line? Hello?" I tried again. "Who is this?" Are you in danger? Silence. Then the same whisper, a little louder this time. Don't hang up. I held the phone out a few inches, heart thudding hard in my chest. I could hear my own breathing mixing with the static. Something about that voice? It wasn't begging. It wasn't scared. It sounded like a warning. I lowered my flashlight and looked around the car again. Everything was still. The empty road, the hills, the sky thick with clouds. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was sitting right there in the driver's seat watching me. I turned the light toward it. The seat was empty. Still pushed all the way back, but the indentation in the leather looked deeper now, like someone had just gotten up. I swallowed hard and tried to steady my breathing. My training told me to call for backup, secure the area, follow procedure. But the radio had gone dead, and the phone in my hand was my only link to anyone. I raised it again. Dispatch, this is Officer Holt. I'm at mile marker 79. The 911 call is still active. I think the caller might still be nearby. For a few seconds, nothing but static. Then a faint click, and a voice came through. Soft, distant, trembling. Officer Holt? It was my dispatcher, Karen. But her voice sounded weak, like it was coming from underwater. Karen, thank God, I said. I've got an abandoned vehicle, silver sedan, engine still running. I found a phone connected to your line. Someone whispered. The line crackled, cutting me off. Then, don't move. Her voice faded, stretched, broke apart into noise. And beneath it, that same whisper again. Closer this time. Don't hang up. I looked at the timer on the phone screen. It said, EO 03211. That call had been going for over 30 minutes. But dispatch had only just sent me 10 minutes ago. That didn't make sense. None of it did. I set the phone gently back on the seat, afraid of breaking the connection, or maybe afraid of what would happen if I did. The air inside the car was getting warmer, heavier. I could smell something faint now, like old copper and wet earth. My flashlight beam slid across the floor mat. That's when I noticed it. A small smear of something dark near the gas pedal. It looked like dried blood. I leaned closer, careful not to touch it. And that's when the phone speaker hissed sharply, almost like it was reacting to me. Don't hang up, the voice whispered again. But now there was something different in the tone. A strain, like whoever said it was trying to speak through clenched teeth. My stomach turned. I stepped back, bumping into the open door. It slammed shut behind me with a heavy thud that made me jump. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring through the window at the glowing phone. The blue light flickered across the dashboard like a heartbeat. The whisper kept coming over and over, quiet, steady, deliberate. Don't hang up. Don't hang up. Don't hang up. Each time softer, like it was fading away. I finally forced myself to open the door again. The phone was still there, but the call timer had stopped. It read 0000. The line was dead, except I could still hear breathing, not from the phone. From the back seat, I turned slowly. My light swept across empty fabric, an old jacket, a half-drunk bottle of water, nothing else. But the air felt wrong, dense, like something invisible was sitting right there beside me. I spoke quietly, almost without realizing it. Is someone here? The engine sputtered. Once, twice. Then it roared to life on its own. The radio burst with static again. A dozen voices at once, overlapping, broken, each one trying to form words that never came. I slammed the gear shift into park and shut the ignition off, but the sound didn't stop. It just shifted, from the speakers to the air around me, whispers, all saying the same thing. Don't hang up! I stumbled out of the car, gasping. The sound followed me for a few seconds, echoing faintly through the open door, then faded back into silence. My flashlight flickered again, dimming to a faint yellow glow. Somewhere out in the dark, I heard movement. Not loud, not close. Just enough to make my blood run cold. Footsteps, bare feet on gravel, slow, dragging. I turned toward the sound, shining the light along the shoulder of the highway. Nothing there, but I could feel it. Someone standing just outside the reach of the beam. Watching, I called out, "Whoever you are, stop right there!" My voice echoed back at me, flat and hollow. No reply. I glanced at the sedan again. The phone screen was glowing brighter now, like the brightness had turned up on its own. And there was a message on it. 4 words. "He's in the car." I felt my chest tighten. I shone the light inside again, and for a split second I saw it. A reflection. In the rearview mirror, someone sitting in the back seat, just barely visible. No movement, no sound. Just the faint outline of a man's face, pale, eyes open wide. I blinked, and he was gone. The phone buzzed once more, screen flickering. A new message appeared, replacing the first. "Don't leave him alone." The words burned on the screen for a few seconds before the phone went black. I backed away from the car, pulse hammering so hard I could barely breathe. The wind had picked up again, colder now. It carried the smell of rain and something else, something sour, like rot buried deep under the sand. I stood there under the flashing lights of my cruiser, watching the empty road stretch endlessly in both directions. No cars, no sound, just me. And then faintly, from inside the sedan, the phone began to ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't answer it. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring through the window, watching the cracked screen light up over and over again. Each time it rang, the glow spread across the windshield like a pulse of breath, then stopped. The silence afterward felt heavier than anything I've ever heard. I reached for my radio one last time. Static again. But this time, through the noise, I could hear Karen's voice, small and distant. Unit 12. "Do not engage with the caller. Leave the scene immediately." Her words came in broken pieces, but I caught enough. She sounded terrified. I looked back at the car. The engine was off again. The phone dark. For a second, I almost believed it was over. Then the screen lit up one more time, just long enough for me to see the name on the incoming call. Daniel Holt, my own name. My own number. The phone kept ringing. And even though I knew I shouldn't, I reached for the handle and answered. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I left the scene, even after I filed the report, the sound of that phone ringing stayed with me. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear it, faint, steady, patient, like it was waiting for me to pick up again. By morning, my supervisor called me into the station. They wanted me to review the dash cam footage, said something didn't line up with my report. The drive into town felt unreal. The sun was out, the sky clear, too clear. Everything looked normal, like last night hadn't happened at all, but I could still smell it, that faint metallic scent from the car, the smell of exhaust and old copper. It clung to me somehow, like it had soaked into my skin. When I got to the office, Karen was there too, the dispatcher. She looked pale, eyes red, like she hadn't slept either. She didn't say much, just gave me a nod and looked away. Sergeant Miller sat me down in front of the monitor. He didn't even start with questions. He just pressed play. The dash cam footage started around 11:45 p.m. You can see my cruiser pulling up behind the silver sedan. The lights flashing red and blue, the empty road stretching out into black. It all looked exactly how I remembered. I watched myself step out of the car, walk up to the driver's side. Then I started talking, only I wasn't talking to no one. I was facing the empty air beside the sedan, and nodding, pausing, answering, like someone was standing there. Miller leaned forward. "You see that?" he said quietly. I didn't answer, because I could see it, and I could see something else too. There was a shape, faint, barely visible, just at the edge of the frame, almost like a shadow that didn't belong to me or the car. It flickered like fog moving in slow waves. But the air that night was clear. Then the part that made my stomach twist. I watched myself lean against the sedan and say something, but the dash cam didn't pick up my voice clearly, just static. Then suddenly the audio came back, and I heard myself say, "Sir, please calm down. I'm just here to help." I froze, because there was no sir, no one there, and I had no memory of saying that. Miller rewound the footage and played it again. Same thing, same line, same empty road. He stopped the video and looked at me. "You sure you were alone out there?" I wanted to tell him yes, that it was just the dark, my nerves, the weird radio interference. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out, because a part of me, the part that still smelled the exhaust, that still heard that whisper, wasn't sure anymore. Miller sighed and said he'd send the body cam footage to forensics. Then he told me to take the rest of the day off. But when I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about that shadow. That night, around 2 a.m., I got a call. Unknown number. I didn't answer. But it left a voicemail. When I played it, I heard static. And underneath it, a voice that sounded just like mine, whispering, "Don't hang up." I dropped the phone. It slid under the couch, screen still glowing. I didn't touch it again until morning. The next day, Miller called me back. He said they'd reviewed the body cam footage. He sounded different, like he was choosing his words carefully. He asked if I could come in right away. When I got to the station, he didn't meet my eyes. Just led me down the hall to the video room. Karen was there again, sitting stiff in her chair, her hands shaking slightly. The body cam was already queued up. Miller hit play. The footage started just after I turned off the sedan's engine. Everything looked normal at first. My flashlight sweeping over the road, my voice calling out. But then the fog appeared. Thick, rolling in slow from the sides of the frame like smoke, only there hadn't been fog that night. Not a trace of it. On the recording, I start talking again, quietly like I'm speaking to someone close. But in the video, no one's there, and behind me, just for a moment, the fog shifts, like something moving inside it. Karen covered her mouth as the footage played. You could see my shadow on the ground, clear, sharp, but then another one appeared right behind it, taller, thin. It moved when I didn't. Miller paused the video. "Daniel, who were you talking to?" I couldn't answer. My throat felt dry, my chest tight, because even frozen on the screen, I could see it. That second shadow bending forward close to me, like it was whispering something I couldn't hear. He played the rest. Around the point where I picked up the phone, the fog thickened until it swallowed half the frame. The audio started breaking down. Static, wind, something that almost sounded like a heartbeat. And then, clear as day, the whisper came through. "Don't hang up." Karen flinched, closing her eyes. I just stared at the screen, frozen. The voice wasn't from the phone. It wasn't mine either. It came from right beside the body cam, close enough that if I'd turned my head, I would have seen whoever said it. Miller stopped the playback, then leaned back slowly. He looked at me for a long time before speaking. "We'll file this under equipment malfunction." That sound could be radio feedback, or wind distortion. I could tell he didn't believe that. He just didn't know what else to say. I nodded, pretending I agreed. But inside, I could still feel the breath of that whisper, like it had brushed against my ear. They released me from duty for the rest of the week. Said it was routine after a traumatic event. I didn't argue. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off, replaying everything in my head. The whisper, the fog, the shadow that moved when I didn't, and the smell, that thick, choking exhaust smell that wouldn't fade. At some point, I realized it wasn't just in my head. The air in the room had changed. It was heavy again, warm, tasted like gasoline and metal. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the night was still. But down the street near the curb, a car was parked. Silver sedan. Engine running. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. The red glow of the taillights reflected off the wet pavement like eyes. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then the smell got stronger, seeping through the vents, filling my lungs. I backed away, heart racing. Grabbed my phone and called Karen. When she answered, I didn't even let her speak. "Karen, it's here," I said. "The car, the same one." She went quiet. Then slowly she said, "Daniel, we towed that vehicle this morning. It's impounded." "You must be mistaken." I looked again. The car was still there, running, exhaust curling into the night air. I whispered into the phone, "I can see it." And then from the line, faint but clear, came that same voice. "Don't hang up." Karen started shouting my name through the speaker, but I wasn't listening anymore. The car door outside opened on its own. A figure stepped out, too dark to make out the face. But I could see the outline, tall, thin, same as the shadow in the footage. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor, still connected. I heard Karen's voice fading into static. Then the smell got so thick I couldn't think straight. It burned my throat, filled my head with a low ringing sound. I remember stumbling to the front door, trying to open it, but the air was so heavy, like breathing underwater. And through the haze, I saw it, the figure standing just beyond the window glass. Close enough to touch, it leaned forward. And even though the sound was muffled, I heard it whisper again, soft, almost gentle, "Don't hang up." Then everything went black. When I woke up, the house was cold again. No smell, no sound, just the faint light of morning coming through the blinds. The car was gone, but on the table, my phone screen was on. A new voicemail. Timestamp, 3:17 a.m. Length, 0001. I played it. Only one word came through. My name. They told me the car was gone for good. Impounded, logged, locked in a storage yard 50 miles from the highway. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But that night, just after midnight, the phone in my kitchen started to ring again. Unknown number, same one. The same one from the passenger seat. I let it ring until it stopped. Then I stood there, staring at the dark screen, waiting for it to light up again. It didn't. Instead, a new sound came through the quiet. My radio scanner, still sitting on the counter from my last shift. It clicked alive. A woman's voice, faint and strained. "Dispatch to any available unit. We've got a 911 call. Mile marker 79. No response from the caller." My chest went cold. I waited for someone else to answer. No one did. The dispatcher tried again. "Caller's number matches the same from last week. Line's open. Sounds like..." Static swallowed her mid-sentence. When it cleared, I thought I heard breathing. I should have turned the scanner off right then, but I didn't. I just listened. For almost 2 minutes, nothing but low static and wind. Then faintly a voice came through the feed. It was distant, distorted, but I knew it. It was my voice. "Don't hang up." I unplugged the scanner and backed away. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab my keys. I don't remember getting in the car or driving out there, just the feeling that something was pulling me back to that mile marker. Like gravity, like I didn't have a choice. The road looked the same as always, long, flat, endless. But when I reached mile marker 79, my headlights hit the tow company's tire marks, and something else. A shape, small, crumpled on the shoulder. I stopped the car and stepped out, flashlight in hand. It wasn't a body. It was a phone, same model, same cracked screen, still glowing faintly. I crouched down and looked at the display. The call was active. Timer running, 01304. And on the other end, that same faint hiss. Breathing. I whispered into the receiver, even though I didn't know why. "Hello?" Static. Then a man's voice, calm, quiet, almost curious. "Why did you come back?" I froze. The voice didn't sound human. Or maybe it did, but too perfect. Like someone imitating speech. Soft, measured. "Who is this?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then faintly, "You left me there." The phone crackled. The timer reset to 0, then started climbing again. 00001, 00002, 0003. I dropped it and stepped back. That's when I saw the fog, rolling in across the asphalt, low and thick, swallowing the highway. The same kind of fog that showed up on my body cam, and with it came that smell again. Exhaust, sweet, heavy, metallic. I turned toward my cruiser, but the fog had already wrapped around it. The red and blue lights blurred into dull halos. Everything was quiet except for the low hum of the idling engine. Then, through the haze, I heard the scanner again. I'd left it in the car, but now it was alive. Karen's voice, barely audible through the static. "Daniel, if you can hear me, do not respond to the call. It's looping. Her voice broke, replaced by a sharp burst of noise. And under it, another voice. "Mine again? You're already here." The headlights flickered once, and for a second I saw movement. A figure standing just past the fog line. Tall, motionless, facing me. I blinked and it was gone. But when I turned back toward the road, the phone was gone too. Just the faint outline of where it had been pressed into the dust. I don't remember much after that. Just driving. Fast. the fog chasing me in the rearview mirror curling behind the car like smoke. When I got back to town, I went straight to dispatch. Karen was still on duty, sitting alone in the glow of the monitors. She looked up when I walked in and her face went pale. "Daniel," she said, "you weren't on the roster tonight." "I know," I told her. "But the call," she cut me off, shaking her head. "I didn't send that." "The line's been dead since 2 a.m. I stared at her. Then she turned one of the monitors toward me. It was the call log, same number, same location, mile marker 79. The timestamp read 01:12 a.m., right around the time I found that phone. The strangest part? The caller ID wasn't blank anymore. It listed a name. Officer Daniel Holt. My throat went dry. Karen must have seen it too because she covered her mouth, whispering, "Daniel." "That's you." I tried to laugh, but it came out broken. "That's impossible." "My numbers." I pulled out my phone to show her. Screen black. Wouldn't turn on. Karen just stared. Then the console started to ring again. "That same incoming number." The same name. She looked at me. "What do we do?" I didn't answer. The ringing filled the whole room, sharp and cold, echoing off the glass and walls. After the fourth ring, it stopped. Silence. Then the line reconnected on its own. Speaker crackled. And both of us heard it. The breathing, slow, wet, close. Then my voice, distorted, broken through the static. "Don't hang up." Karen ripped her headset off, trembling. The line stayed open for several seconds, and then a new sound came through. Not a voice. Something like a car engine turning over again and again. She ended the call manually, hands shaking. We both sat there in the dark glow of the screens, too scared to speak. When we finally checked the log again, it had added a new note automatically. "Call disconnected. Origin Highway 87, mile marker 79, signal lost." That was 4 nights ago. And every night since, it's happened again. Same number, same call. Always between 12:30 and 2 a.m. They've started recording them now, but when you play the tapes back, there's no voice, just the sound of an engine idling. Sometimes, if you listen close, you can hear a door creak open, and someone, or something, breathing close to the mic. No one's been able to trace the signal. Each time they try, it loops, bouncing between towers, repeating the same coordinates. Mile marker 79, last night I went out there again. I told no one. Just drove until the road turned dark and empty. The fog was waiting. So was the smell. I parked where it had all started, turned off the lights, and waited. The air was thick, silent. Then, after a few minutes, my radio came alive again. Faint, crackling. "Dispatch to Unit 12. "You're not supposed to be there." I grabbed the mic. "Karen, is that you?" Static. Then my voice answered. But it wasn't coming from me. "Leave it alone, Daniel. It's not done with you yet." The radio hissed, then cut off completely. And just before everything went quiet again, I heard something else. The same whisper that had followed me from the start. Soft. Right beside my ear. "Don't hang up." The fog swallowed the cruiser then. The dashboard lights flickered and I caught my reflection in the windshield. Only it wasn't moving with me. It smiled when I didn't. I remember gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the smell of exhaust filling the car again. It felt like the air itself was thick with it. I could feel it burning in my chest. And somewhere, beneath all that noise, I heard the faint buzz of a ringing phone. 1 ring, 2, 3. Then a voice, quiet and familiar, came through the static. "Officer Holt, we've got a stalled vehicle reported at mile marker 79. Engine's still running. No driver in sight." My vision blurred. My hand reached for the mic on its own, and I heard myself answer, "Copy that. I'm on my way." My first week as a 911 dispatcher was supposed to be uneventful. Mostly prank calls, noise complaints, maybe a lost dog or two. But on my third night shift around 11:47 p.m., the line lit up, and nothing's been the same since. It started like any other call. Routine, mechanical. I picked up and went through the script they drill into you during training. 1. What's your emergency? All I heard was breathing, shaky, fast. And then a voice. Male, mid-40s, terrified. "She's in the road," he said. "She just ran out. Oh my God, she's screaming. She's..." Then silence. Just a dull rushing noise like wind against a car window. "Sir," I said, "can you tell me your location?" A pause, then faintly, "Echo Lane, near the curve." "She's gone now," I typed it into the system. Echo Lane was a rural back road on the edge of town. Not much traffic after dark. I flagged it as a possible pedestrian emergency and sent a patrol unit. Before I could even log the call, another line started ringing. Different number. Different voice. 911, what's your emergency? This one was a woman, crying. I just saw her, she said. On Echo Lane. She was in the middle of the road, screaming. I almost hit her. I felt my stomach drop. "Ma'am, are you sure it was a person?" "Yes," she snapped. She was barefoot, wearing a white dress. She was looking right at me. The woman's voice cracked. And then she ran straight into the dark. The call cut out before I could say another word. 2 calls. Same location, same description. I looked around the room. There were only 2 of us working that night, me and Robert, the night supervisor. He was older, gray-haired, half asleep behind a coffee mug that had probably been there since the 90s. I told him what I heard. He frowned, looked at the clock, then sighed. "Echo Lane again?" I asked what he meant. He didn't answer at first, just leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. "Used to get calls like that all the time," he said. "Couple years back, woman in white screaming on the road. Every caller described her the same way." "What happened to her?" I asked. He just said, "There was never anyone there," and went back to his coffee. I tried to focus on the screens, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Something about the woman's voice, that panic, it stuck with me. I told myself it was just coincidence. People get spooked out there. Fog, headlights, maybe a deer or a trick of the shadows. But then, around 12:30, the line rang again. Same number as the first call. I hesitated, then picked up. "Wevan, what's your emergency?" No one answered. Just faint static. And then, in the background, a sound. Screaming. It was far away at first, almost buried under the noise, but it got louder. It wasn't the kind of scream you make when you're scared. It was raw. "Like someone being torn apart inside, sir," I said louder this time. "Can you hear me?" No response. Just that scream. High-pitched, desperate, right into the mic. Then the call dropped. I sat there staring at the console, the dial tone humming like a flat line. Robert walked over when he saw my face. "What happened?" he asked. I replayed the recording. He listened, didn't say a word. When it ended, he just muttered, "It's starting again." Before I could ask what that meant, the second line lit up. Then the third. 3 calls, back to back, all from different numbers, all reporting the same thing. A woman in white screaming in the road. Some said she was running. Some said she was crawling. One said she was standing still, staring straight into their headlights. Mouth open like she was mid-scream, but there was no sound coming out. Every single caller hung up before I could finish asking questions. Robert looked pale. He picked up the radio and called it in to patrol, but no one responded. He tried again. Nothing. The signal was clean, but the line was dead. That's when the console buzzed. Not the ringing tone, not static, something else. A low electrical hum that vibrated through the desk. Then all the lines lit up at once. Every single one. Robert froze. "Don't answer," he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes said something else. I just stared at the blinking lights. 20, 30 lines, all incoming. The caller IDs all said the same thing. Unknown, and under that, where the number should have been, was a single word. Echo. The hum got louder. I couldn't hear anything else. Then one of the calls connected on its own. The headset crackled, and a woman's voice came through. Low, shaking, like she was right beside me. "Help me," I whispered. "Where are you?" She didn't answer. Just kept whispering the same words over and over. "Help me, help me, please. I didn't mean to." The sound faded into sobbing, then into a sharp, painful wail that made my eardrum ache. I tore the headset off, but the voice didn't stop. It was still coming from the speaker. Raw, echoing through the room. Then, suddenly, silence. The console went dark. All the lights off. No power. The whole room felt heavy, like the air had thickened. Robert was still standing beside me, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring at the monitor. The screen had come back on by itself, and on it was a single open line. Call duration, Draw 1. Origin, Echo Lane. The timer started ticking up. 0002, 003, 004. I leaned in closer. The line wasn't empty. I could hear something faint, breathing again. But this time it was rhythmic, too slow, too deliberate. Then softly that same voice whispered through the static. "She's still out here." The line cut off. The console shut down completely. We sat in the dark for what felt like forever. Eventually, the emergency lights flickered back on, and everything looked normal again. The system rebooted, all the data gone except for one new log entry. Incoming call, Echo Lane, 11:47 p.m. Caller name, unknown female. Status, disconnected. Robert told me to clock out early. Said he'd handle the report. But as I was leaving, I caught him staring at the monitor again, mumbling to himself. When I asked what he was looking at, he said, "That timestamp's wrong." I checked the clock on the wall. It was 2:13 a.m., but the screen showed 11:47 p.m., the exact same minute the first call came in. Like the system was stuck in that moment, like it never moved forward. I left the building, my head spinning. Outside, the night was silent except for the faint hum of cars on the highway. I got into my car, locked the doors, and sat there for a while, trying to breathe. When I finally turned the radio on, all I heard was static. Then faintly beneath it, a scream, high, distant, coming from somewhere down the road. I turned it off immediately, rolled down the window just to make sure it wasn't in my head. But it was there, faint, carried by the wind. A woman's scream somewhere out on Echo Lane. I told myself not to look, not to care, but I did. I turned the car toward that direction, headlights cutting through the dark. The sound got louder as I got closer. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The road was empty, no cars, no people, just the sign, Echo Lane, and beneath it, carved into the metal, like someone had scratched it with a key, "Help me." That was the last time I took a night shift. But every now and then, when the wind's just right, my phone buzzes with an unknown number. No ID, no name. When I answer, it's always the same. Silence. And then faintly, a woman whispering, "She's still out here." I didn't sleep after that first night. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing it. The voice on the phone, whispering through static. "She's still out here." By the next evening, I was back at the dispatch center, even though I'd promised myself I wouldn't take another night shift. Robert wasn't there. They told me he'd called in sick, but no one could reach him. That's when I noticed a brown envelope sitting on my desk. No label, just my name written in pen. Inside were 3 flash drives, each marked with a date. Echo 01, Echo 02, Echo 03. At first I thought it was old training material, maybe case files. But then I saw the sticky note attached. In Robert's handwriting, "Listen, don't tell anyone. You'll understand." I plugged in the first drive and opened the folder. There were only a few files, all short. Dashcam audio from patrol cars. The timestamps matched the night of the calls. Each file started the same way. Quiet engine hum, faint static, radio chatter. Then, about 20 seconds in, the first scream. It hit me hard. It was loud, echoing through the speakers, sudden but wrong. It didn't sound like it came from outside the car. It sounded like it was inside, close, like someone had screamed right into the mic. I played the next recording. Same thing. Only this time the scream came a few seconds later, but it was identical. Same pitch, same duration, same crack at the end. It wasn't possible. These were different officers, different vehicles, different positions on the road. Yet the scream repeated perfectly. Same voice, same distance, like a loop burned into each recording. By the third file, I felt my throat tighten. I could almost predict when it would happen. 10 seconds of static. Then that long, raw sound again, rising and breaking just like before. After the scream faded, something new played through the dash mic. A faint clicking sound, rhythmic, like metal tapping against glass. Then a voice. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got eyes on a figure, female, standing in the road." The voice was calm, professional. You could hear the crunch of gravel as he stepped out of his cruiser. Then silence. Just the sound of wind and static. After about 30 seconds, the mic picked up something else. A whisper so quiet I almost missed it. It said, "Don't look away!" Then the officer screamed. It wasn't like the first one. This one was cut off halfway, replaced by a wet, choking noise. The file ended there. I yanked out my headset and just sat there breathing hard. The room felt colder somehow, the hum of the lights above me sharper. Every sound made me flinch. I thought about deleting the files, pretending I never saw them. But the note, the way Robert had written it, it felt like a warning, not a suggestion. So I listened to the next drive. The second one started the same way. Different patrol unit, same stretch of road. The timestamp read 2 weeks after the first incident. Dispatch, I'm at Echo Lane, responding to multiple calls. Nothing visible. You could hear the officer's breathing, steady, cautious. He sounded young, probably newer than me. Then, through the static, the faint echo of that same scream. Farther away this time, like it was coming from somewhere down the highway. He said, "Copy that, I think I heard something." "Moving closer!" The scream repeated again, only closer. Then again, louder, sharper. Each time it grew more distorted, like the same recording playing over itself, overlapping, stacking. By the fourth time, it was unbearable, like 100 voices screaming the same note, slightly out of sync. The officer shouted into his radio, "Dispatch, I'm hearing, Jesus Christ, what is that?" Then a crash. Metal on metal, glass shattering. You could hear the car door slam open and the audio cut. I paused the playback and just stared at the timer. 3:33. Every file ended at that exact second. 3 minutes, 33 seconds in. Not one longer. Not one shorter. By then, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hit play on the last drive. This one wasn't labeled by date. Just a single word written on the side in black marker, "Live." The file name was Recording Ongoing Wave Dot. It started with static, louder than before. Then faint voices, multiple this time, whispering under the noise. At first I thought it was interference, but as I listened closer, I realized they were repeating the same phrase over and over. "She's still out here." Then the sound of a cruiser door opening, footsteps, breathing, and a man's voice I recognized immediately. "Roberts. Dispatch, I'm at Echo Lane. I got the reports. Checking it out myself." My chest went tight. I didn't even know he'd gone out there. No one had logged it. He kept talking quietly like he was trying to stay calm. "There's fog setting in. Visibility's dropping fast. I can hear something, like crying." Then the crying turned into that same scream. Not from the distance this time. From right beside him. The mic distorted, like it was overloading. Then a woman's voice came through, clear, cold, too calm for how loud the noise was around her. You shouldn't have listened. The audio crackled. You could hear Robert breathing hard, his footsteps crunching faster, then the sound of him slamming the car door. The engine started, but the scream didn't stop. It followed him. You could hear it even through the roar of the engine. Faint, layered, overlapping like before. Hundreds of voices now, all the same pitch, all the same cry. Then, through all of it, I heard something that made my stomach twist. A whisper, right up against the mic, close enough to hear the breath. "Don't hang up." The file stopped. Not faded out, stopped. Like someone had cut the power mid-sound. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. I replayed that last second over and over, but every time I did, I could hear something new beneath it. Faint static patterns that almost formed words. And when I slowed it down enough, I swore I could hear Robert's voice. Faint, panicked, whispering my name. That was 2 nights ago. I tried to report it, but the files were gone the next morning. All 3 drives, the envelope, even the sticky note vanished from my desk. No one else remembered seeing them, but the system kept glitching. Every time I logged into the dispatch terminal, the screen would flicker for half a second and flash a message. Echo 03, playback interrupted, and then the audio from that final recording would play through the speakers. Just for a moment. The same overlapping screams, layered and warped, always ending at 3:33. I can still hear them now, even when the system's off. Sometimes when I drive home, I'll catch them on the radio, just beneath the static of an empty channel. That same sound, faint, distant, buried under noise. And if I turn the volume up just right, I can hear her voice in between the screams. Whispering, almost tender. You shouldn't have listened. Last night my phone rang at exactly 3:33, no caller ID. When I picked up, I didn't say a word, but the other side wasn't silent. There was breathing, slow, deliberate. Then a faint click, metal against glass, and a voice I knew. "Roberts, she's still out here," he said. Then, faintly behind him, that sound again. The scream, layered, endless, echoing down the line. I tried to hang up, but the phone wouldn't disconnect. The screen just froze, the timer stuck at 00:03:33. Now I keep hearing it everywhere, in the hum of the lights, in the static between stations, in the rhythm of my own breathing. The recordings are gone, but I think they're still playing somewhere, out there, on a loop, waiting for someone new to listen. I don't think anyone ever tells you what silence really sounds like until you've sat in a dispatch center after midnight. It's not quiet, not really. There's this constant hum, computers, lights, that faint buzz in the earpiece that you stop noticing after a few months. It's like the building itself is alive, breathing through static and code. That night, though, I noticed it. The silence felt different, too still, too aware. It had been 3 days since the first call came in from Echo Lane, the one about the woman screaming in the road. Since then, I'd listened to every dash cam, every patrol log, every 911 recording I could get my hands on. And every single one had the same sound, the same scream, the same voice, only. It wasn't exactly the same. I didn't tell anyone that part. When you work dispatch, you learn to listen in layers. Background noise tells you more than people think. Crickets can give you time of night. Wind direction tells you where they're standing. Even breath, the rhythm of someone's panic, can help you locate them. But these recordings, something was off. Every scream lined up perfectly in timing, pitch, and duration. Yet if you listened close, really close, one of them sounded slightly closer each time. I'd been up for 20 hours that day. My shift was about to end when I leaned back in my chair and decided to listen one more time. Just one more run-through before I went home. I hit play, put the headset on, and waited. The sound started. Static, car doors slamming, the click of a radio. Then the scream, loud, sudden, raw enough to make the hair on my arms rise. But this time, there was a whisper right before it. I froze the playback, scrolled back 5 seconds, and turned the volume up. At the exact point before the scream hit, I heard it. A breath. Then a voice. So faint I thought it might have been feedback. Wait, just that. A single word. I replayed it again and again, each time louder, filtering out the background. The voice didn't sound panicked, though. It sounded tired, broken, like someone begging time to stop. I remember thinking, did anyone else hear this? Then another thought. If not, why can I? At 12:43 a.m., the phone on my desk rang. No caller ID. Just the internal system code, meaning it came from within the department. I answered, expecting one of the patrol units to check in. "Dispatch, go ahead," I said. But there was nothing. No static, no breathing. Only that same faint hum. Then I realized the line was still open. "Hello?" I said again. "This is County Dispatch." The hum in my earpiece grew louder, turning into a low drone. My screen flickered once, then the line cut out. I sat there, waiting for it to ring again, but it didn't. I tried shaking it off. Told myself maybe it was a system glitch or a feedback loop. But when I looked at the call log, it didn't show up at all. It never happened. I was about to report it to IT when my headset crackled. It wasn't the phone ringing. This was the open channel, the one that connects to active calls. Except there were no active calls. Help me. I froze. The voice came through soft, like someone whispering directly into the mic. "Hello? 911 Dispatch," I said quickly. "What's your location?" Static answered. Then, clearer this time. "Don't let it touch me." My pulse spiked. I switched through every active line, but nothing was there. No open calls, no emergency pings, no audio files. "The voice wasn't supposed to exist. Who is this?" I said again, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Ma'am, if you can hear me, tell me where you are." Nothing. Just the faint hum again. Then the scream hit. It was the same one from the recordings. The same tone, the same rise in pitch, the same hopeless crack at the end. I yanked the headset off. My screen blinked once, showing an error code I'd never seen before, something about an unsynced channel. Then everything went black. When the monitors rebooted, the timestamp on the system read 12:46 a.m. Only 3 minutes had passed, but I swear it felt longer. I logged everything in the report, but I didn't include the voice. I didn't want to sound like I was losing it. I told myself it was exhaustion. Maybe I'd accidentally played back one of the archived calls. That had to be it. I drove home that night with the radio off. No music, no noise, just the road. But the silence followed me. It's strange. The way sound can echo in your head long after it's gone. You start doubting what's real. Was it a memory replaying itself? Or something still happening somewhere else? I didn't sleep much that night. When I finally did, I dreamed about the woman from Echo Lane. Not her face, just her voice. She screamed, then went quiet, then whispered something I couldn't make out. When I woke up, the sound was still there. I even checked my phone thinking maybe an alarm went off. But it wasn't that. It was a low tone, barely audible, like static buried under silence. When I went back to work the next night, I avoided listening to the recordings. But about an hour into the shift, another dispatcher named Karen came over. "You been messing with the playback logs?" she asked. "No, why?" She frowned. "Because I just pulled one from Echo Lane and it glitched, like overlapped itself. The scream loops 3 times, but every loop's got a voice under it." My stomach dropped. "A voice?" "Yeah," she said. "Like someone whispering your name." I didn't say anything. Just turned back to my monitor and stared at the blinking cursor on the dispatch feed. The next time the headset buzzed, I nearly jumped. It wasn't a call, it was just feedback again. I reached to adjust it, and that's when I heard it. Not in the system. Not in the background. Inside the headset, right against my ear. "Why didn't you help me?" The voice was clearer now, closer. Female. The same one from the recordings. I ripped the headset off, heart racing, and slammed the mute switch. But even after I pulled it away, I could still hear her. Not through the speakers, through the room. The air itself seemed to hum with her words. "Why didn't you help me?" Over and over. I left the desk and stood in the hallway trying to steady my breathing. Karen walked past and gave me a weird look. I told her I needed some air and stepped outside. It was drizzling. The sound of rain usually calms me, but this time it didn't. Every drop hitting the pavement sounded like static. When I went back in, everything was quiet again. My headset sat on the desk where I left it, the indicator light blinking softly. I hesitated before putting it back on. My hands were shaking. I told myself, just breathe. You're tired. You're hearing things. But the moment the headset touched my ear, I knew it wasn't over, because beneath the static, so faint I almost missed it, was breathing. Slow. Ragged. Too real to be a recording. Then, right before the line cut off, I heard it again. That same broken voice. "Dispatch." A pause. Then, "She's still on the road." The line went dead, and for the first time in my career, I took off my headset, shut off the console, and walked out. I didn't even clock out. I just left. But even now, days later, I swear I still hear her. When I close my eyes, when the world gets too quiet, that's when she comes back. Always the same scream. Always the same whisper at the end. Wait. I wasn't supposed to go digging through old case files. Dispatchers aren't investigators. We route calls, log reports, keep the lines clear. But after everything that happened, the voices, the screams, the whispers that followed me home. I needed answers. I couldn't sleep anymore. Every night I'd lie awake, replaying the same scream in my head, hearing her voice slip through static like it was reaching for me. I told myself I'd look once. Just once. The archives room was down in the basement, past the vending machines and that flickering light that's been dying for years. The air down there always smelled like old paper and mildew. A lot of these files hadn't been touched since the 80s. It took a while to find the right section. Traffic incidents. Echo County. I flipped through box after box until I saw it. Faded label. Nearly torn off. Echo Lane, 1992-1995. I pulled it down, set it on the table, and started reading. The report was yellowed, written in that old blocky typewriter font. Date, August 19th, 1993. Time, 12:44 a.m. Location, Echo Lane near mile marker 12. My chest tightened. 12:44 a.m. Almost the same time the calls started coming in last week. It was a fatal accident. A single car rollover. According to the report, the driver swerved to avoid a pedestrian, a woman running into the roadway. The officer wrote that she appeared distraught, screaming, possibly under the influence. The vehicle flipped twice. The driver was pronounced dead at the scene. The pedestrian, the woman, was never found. No ID, no trace, no follow-up notes. Just a line that said, "Search discontinued after 48 hours." I stared at that sentence until the letters started to blur. I turned the page. There were photos clipped to the back, grainy, black and white, taken at night. One showed the wrecked car, flipped on its side, headlights still glowing in the dark. Another showed the skid marks veering off the road, but the last one made my skin crawl. It was the edge of the frame, the ditch near the tree line. You could barely see it, but there was something there. A shape, a shadow maybe, crouched low. It looked like a person. Someone had circled it in red pen, and next to it, in handwriting, was a single word. Screaming. I felt a chill move up my spine. I looked through the rest of the file, but most of it was just paperwork. Blood alcohol tests, weather reports, signed witness statements. Then, tucked near the back, was a small cassette tape in a plastic sleeve. Label read, 911 call, Echo Lane crash. I didn't even think. I grabbed the old recorder from the shelf and pressed play. At first, it was just static. Then the sound of tires screeching. A man's voice, panicked, yelling something. Then her, the scream, the same one I'd been hearing all week. The same exact pitch, the same exact break halfway through. I froze. The tape clicked softly as it kept rolling. Then there was a second voice, a dispatcher from decades ago. Calm, rehearsed. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. What's your location? No answer, only breathing. Then faintly the woman whispered something. Please don't let him find me. Then the line went dead. I stopped the tape. I could feel my pulse in my throat. I played it again, just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. Same words, same tone, same desperation. Only this time, when the line went dead, I heard something else. A faint hum beneath the static. A sound I'd heard before. My headset hum. That low tone that filled the dispatch room whenever the calls came through. I yanked the tape out, staring at it like it might start moving on its own. It didn't make sense. The case was 32 years old. But somehow the voice, the time, even the background noise, it was all identical to what I'd been hearing now. It wasn't possible. And yet, sitting there under that flickering basement light, I couldn't shake the feeling that time hadn't moved forward at all, that somehow the call never ended. It was just looping, waiting for someone to pick it back up. I went back upstairs trying to calm myself down, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I thought maybe I'd tell my supervisor, or at least mention the recording, but how could I? What would I say? Hey, the ghost from the old accident is still calling us? They'd pull me from duty, maybe send me for a psych eval. When I got back to my desk, Karen was gone. Night shift was quiet. Only the hum of the machines and the ticking of the wall clock filled the room. I sat down, and before I could even log back in, the phone buzzed. Line 3, unregistered number. I stared at it for a long time. My stomach turned cold. Finally, I answered. Dispatch, what's your... And then I heard it. That same breathing. Slow, ragged, right against the mic. Please, the voice whispered. Don't let him find me. I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. Then, silence. Not static, not hum, just dead air. But it felt heavy, like someone was still there, waiting. Who's trying to find you? I forced out. Can you tell me your name? Nothing. The call dropped after 15 seconds. When I checked the call log, nothing. No record of the number. No record of the call. I just sat there staring at the empty screen, hearing the faint echo of her voice in my head. I thought back to that file, the crash, the missing woman, the word screaming scrawled across the photo, and something clicked that I wish hadn't. the driver who died in that accident. His name was Daniel Pierce. The report said he was 29, local mechanic, no priors. But what caught my eye earlier was the note in the witness section. Someone had reported seeing them earlier that night at a bar off Route 9, arguing in the parking lot. The woman screaming, trying to run. He'd followed her. The realization hit me like a gut punch. The woman wasn't running into traffic because she was lost. She was running away. I opened the old photo again on my phone, zooming into that red-circled shadow near the ditch. It looked different now. Clearer, like she was looking right at me. Then, out of nowhere, the lights flickered. My headset crackled on the desk even though no line was active, and through the static came the faintest sound. Not a scream this time, not a whisper. A woman crying, soft, broken sobs that rose and fell with every surge of static. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, between the sobs, a voice. I didn't mean to run. I slowly reached for the headset, pressed it to my ear. "Who is this?" I whispered, but the voice didn't answer me. Instead, it said, "He's still on the road." The line went dead. That's when I noticed something, the time on my monitor. 12:44 a.m., exactly 32 years to the minute after the crash. I stared at that timestamp until I couldn't anymore. The hum in my earpiece faded, replaced by the sound of rain against the windows. When I looked outside, the streets were empty. The whole town was asleep. But for a moment, just one impossible moment, I thought I saw headlights on the horizon. Moving fast, too fast. And for the briefest second, a figure in white ran across the road, disappearing into the dark. The same place, the same time, the same scream that's been looping for decades. Echo Lane doesn't forget, it just replays. You can always tell when a cop's lying by how steady their voice sounds. The calmer they sound on the radio, the worse it really is. I learned that my first year on the job, back when I was the one listening, before I ever found myself on the other end of the mic, trying to keep my own voice from shaking. I've been with the department 26 years. I've handled everything. Domestic calls, standoffs, accident scenes that never leave your head. But what happened that night on County Route 17, that was different. It started like any other late shift. I was patrolling near the state line, a stretch of road barely anyone uses past midnight. No lights, no houses, just miles of asphalt disappearing into fog. The call came through at 12:09 a.m. Dispatch said a vehicle was pulled over on the shoulder, hazards blinking. No 911 call had come in. It was just reported by another driver passing through. Simple welfare check. That's what I told myself. I drove out there, half expecting to find some kid out of gas or a drunk sleeping it off. But as I got closer to mile marker 43, my headlights caught the glint of metal. A silver sedan parked at an angle. Engine off, driver door open. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Usually, even on an empty highway, you hear something. Crickets, wind, maybe a truck in the distance. But out there, it was dead quiet. I parked behind the car, called it in. Dispatch. This is Unit 912. I'm out with a vehicle at mile marker 43. Stand by for plate. I gave the plate number. Routine. My tone was calm, clipped, but I remember my hand shaking as I reached for the flashlight. The car's headlights were still on low beam. The passenger side window was cracked halfway. There was a phone charger dangling from the dash, swaying slightly, like the wind had just moved it. Only there was no wind. I leaned down, shining my light inside. The keys were still in the ignition. The radio was on but silent, no station, just static, and on the passenger seat was a police scanner. That's not something you usually find in a civilian car. I took a step back, scanning the area. The road stretched empty both ways. No movement, no lights. Just fog creeping low across the asphalt. Dispatch, I said, trying to sound normal. Vehicle appears unoccupied. Possible abandoned. Copy that, 912. Do you require backup? I hesitated. I almost said no. But something about that silence pressed against my chest, heavy. Affirmative. Send 922 my way. I heard the click of acknowledgement. That's when I caught movement in the corner of my eye, something shifting near the rear of the sedan. It was small at first, like a trick of the light. But then the rear door creaked open. Slow and deliberate. Dispatch, I said again, voice lower now. I've got movement at the vehicle. Copy 9 to 12. Can you confirm if it's the driver? I didn't answer right away, because whoever, or whatever, was stepping out of that car wasn't moving like a person. At first, I thought they were crouched, hands on the ground, crawling. But when my light caught their face, my stomach dropped. The skin was gray, not pale, gray. Wet-looking, like it had just come out of water. Its mouth hung open, jaw trembling like it was trying to speak but couldn't. Dispatch! My voice cracked then. I remember it clearly on the recording. Possible 1057, unknown condition. Send medical. Static crackled back, faint and uneven. 912, repeat your last. The thing froze when it heard my voice. Then it started crawling faster. Not toward me, toward the woods off the shoulder. It moved in jerks, its limbs bending wrong, like it didn't know how to use them. I unholstered my weapon, but I didn't fire. I couldn't. There's this split second where your brain just refuses to accept what you're seeing. Like your training hits a wall. And I hit that wall hard. I called again. Dispatch, I've got a possible subject fleeing on foot, eastbound into the tree line. Need thermal support. Static again. No reply. The radio light blinked, meaning I was transmitting, but I couldn't hear them. It was like something was blocking the signal. I turned my flashlight back to the car, half expecting someone else to be inside. But the back seat was empty, only a dark smear on the window. It looked like a handprint, but when I got closer, I realized it wasn't from inside. It was on the outside. I remember whispering, "What the hell?" under my breath. You can hear it on the recording, barely. Then came the sound. It started soft, somewhere beyond the tree line. Like whispering mixed with static. It wasn't human speech, more like air pushing through teeth. The radio popped again, louder this time. From 12 status check. Do you copy? I forced my voice steady. Copy. I've got something out here. Unknown subject. Not responding to commands. Then I froze again. Because over the radio, just beneath the dispatcher's voice, I heard another one. Faint. Wet. Repeating my words. Almost like an echo. I looked back at the tree line. And for the first time, I saw eyes, dozens of them. Reflecting light in pairs, low to the ground. Whatever had crawled out of that car wasn't alone. Dispatch, I said. I need units now. I've got multiple contacts in the woods. No response. Only static. And that same low whispering now bleeding through the channel. Then, through the static, came my own voice again. To 12, I need units now. Except it wasn't me saying it. It was slower. Drawn out. Mocking. And behind it, the sound of breathing. I backed up toward my cruiser, my heart slamming in my chest. I don't remember getting in. I just remember slamming the door, locking it, fumbling for the radio. That's when something hit the back of the car. Hard metal dented. The whole frame shook. I turned on the spotlight, aimed it at the woods, and for half a second, I saw one of them standing upright. Just standing. Its head tilted, like it was listening. Then it dropped to all fours again and disappeared into the fog. My last transmission came out barely above a whisper. Dispatch. Tell my wife I'm sorry. There was a pause, long enough to make it clear they'd heard the fear in my voice. Then finally the radio crackled. 9 to 12. Can you repeat? We're not reading you clearly. That was the last thing they ever heard from me. The dashcam footage cuts off right after that. It shows me staring at something off screen. Then there's this flicker, like the image folds in on itself. And then, nothing. They found my cruiser the next morning. Driver's door open, engine still running. Radio burnt out, no sign of me, but the strangest part? The car I pulled over, the silver sedan, it wasn't registered to anyone. No plates, no VIN, no record of it ever existing. Just gone. Sometimes the new guys listen to my final transmission on quiet nights. They say you can hear it under the static. That voice repeating, mine word for word. They say you can tell how real a story is by how the cops act when they talk about it. If they laugh, it's nothing. If they go quiet, it's something they can't unsee. When I joined the department, I used to think all those ghost stories passed around roll call were just that, stories. But after what happened with Officer Daniels, nobody's been laughing. He was one of ours. 26 years on the force. Reliable, calm. The Kind of guy who could walk into a burning house and still sound polite over the radio. That night was supposed to be his last shift before retirement, but what we got instead was a nightmare. We've been trying to explain ever since. It started the morning after his disappearance. His cruiser was found near mile marker 43, engine running, radio fried, door open. No sign of him. No footprints, no struggle, just absence. Like he stepped out of the world mid-sentence. We collected his dash cam, his radio logs, and his body cam. All standard procedure, but it was the body cam footage that made everyone go pale. I was in the review room with Lieutenant Harris and 2 others when they played it. It's a small space, dark. The air always stale from too much coffee and too many secrets. The footage started just like any other routine check. Daniels pulling up behind the sedan, calling in the plate, stepping out with that old steady voice of his. You could hear the gravel crunch under his boots, the soft hum of the engine, the click of the flashlight turning on. Everything seemed normal. For a while. He looked inside the car, passenger seat empty, door cracked open, engine off. Then he turned toward the woods. You could hear him muttering under his breath. Something about movement. At first I thought I saw a figure in the dark, too. Just a shadow behind the trees. But it moved wrong. Too low, too quick. Like something crawling. Harris paused the video. "Run that back," he said. The tech rewound a few seconds, frame by frame. There it was, something slipping between the trees. Its shape hard to pin down. Daniels aimed his flashlight and called it out. Voice still calm, just like in the radio logs. But the thing didn't stop. It moved like it didn't care if it was seen. That's when Daniels' breathing changed. He wasn't calm anymore. You could hear it. Short, shaky. He said something into the radio, but it came out garbled, broken by static. Then the sound cut completely. The video kept rolling, but there was no audio for a solid minute. Daniels walked back toward his cruiser, his flashlight shaking. The lens caught the front windshield of the sedan, just a quick reflection. And that's when everything went wrong, because in that reflection, there were 2 people. Harris leaned in closer, squinting. "Wait," he said. "Pause it there." The tech froze the frame. Zoomed in. You could see Daniels, clear as day, standing by the open door. But next to him, in the reflection, was another figure, right beside him, only there was no one else there. We went back, checked every other camera angle. The dash cam showed the same scene, just Daniels alone. The passenger seat empty, the road clear. But the reflection on that windshield stayed. It didn't move like a trick of the light. It moved with him. Every time he shifted his weight, the other shape shifted too. Its head turning when his didn't. Its mouth slightly open, like it was whispering something only the glass could hear. I remember feeling my skin crawl. I wanted to stop watching, but I couldn't look away. At one point, Daniels bent down, and the reflection turned its head directly toward the camera. It looked human, but wrong, like a copy that didn't finish rendering. Its eyes were too black, its smile too still. And then, for just one frame, it blinked slowly, and its hand reached up, pressing against the inside of the glass. Only, it wasn't inside the car. It was inside the reflection. Harris stood up, muttering something under his breath. The tech looked like he was about to be sick. Could be compression artifact, he said weakly. But no one believed that. We scrubbed through the rest of the footage, trying to find any rational reason for it. At 12:16 a.m., Daniels' camera caught a burst of static, white lines tearing across the screen. Then the image shook violently like something had hit the camera or the cruiser itself, and then came the sound. It was faint, buried under distortion, but when we filtered the audio later, we heard it, a voice. It wasn't Daniels. It wasn't dispatch. It was whispering the same phrase over and over. "Do you see me now?" After that, the footage just ends. Cuts to black like someone pulled the battery out mid-recording. We all sat there for a long time, no one talking. The air felt thick, heavy. Finally, Harris spoke. "Run diagnostics on the file. I want to know if that reflection could have been a glitch." The tech nodded, but his hands were shaking. "Sir, the metadata shows it wasn't a reflection." Harris frowned. "What are you talking about?" He turned the monitor toward us, pointing to the data stream. Look, the reflective layer, the light source calculations, they're not registering. That figure wasn't a reflection at all. Silence. The implication hit us like a wave. Whatever we were seeing, it wasn't light bouncing back. It was something else. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that frozen frame, the thing standing beside Daniels, watching the camera, like it knew we'd be seeing it later. By morning, half the department had heard about the footage. People were whispering about the double, some even calling it the Echo Man. But what really broke everyone came 3 days later. We got a call from records. They'd been cataloging Daniels' old cases, archiving his files. One of them, a domestic disturbance from 1998, had a photo attached. It showed Daniels, younger, standing outside a rural house. The suspect in the photo? A woman, pale, shaking, eyes wide in terror. Behind her, reflected in the window, was that same face, same dark eyes, same broken smile. I don't know what any of it means. Maybe Daniels saw something years ago that never left him. Maybe it followed him back out to that highway. All I know is every copy of that bodycam file was destroyed, officially. The department said it was corrupted beyond repair. But I know that's not true, because sometimes when I'm alone in the review room, the monitor flickers for a second, and I see that reflection again. Not in the footage. In my screen, standing right behind me. It's strange how quickly something can go from a rumor to a routine. When Officer Daniels went missing, the department did what we always do. Filed reports, launched searches, ran his badge number through every possible system. But deep down, everyone knew we weren't looking for a living man anymore. We were just trying to find something that could explain what happened. After the footage review, I stopped taking late-night shifts in the tech room. The silence there got to me. The hum of the monitors. The faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. It all sounded too close to the static in Daniels' recordings. But about a week later, the calls started coming in. At first, they were easy to ignore. A few 911 reports from truckers and late-night drivers saying they'd seen a police cruiser pulled over by the woods near mile marker 43, engine running. Lights off, just sitting there. That stretch of highway doesn't get much traffic. 2 lanes, no lights, no gas stations for miles. So when people say they see a car there, we listen, especially when it's one of ours. The first caller said they thought the officer looked asleep at the wheel. The second said the car was empty. By the 5th call, all saying the same thing. Same spot. Same cruiser number. Dispatch started to take it seriously. I remember sitting at my desk when the supervisor came by and dropped the file on the counter. "You're on this," he said. "Why me?" He didn't answer right away. Just stared at me for a moment, like he was trying to decide if I could handle it. "Because you're the one who saw the footage." I didn't argue. That night, I went out with 2 other officers, McCarthy and Ruiz. We drove down that long stretch of highway, windows down, radios humming softly. The air smelled like rain and asphalt. When we reached mile marker 43, I saw it instantly. Daniels' cruiser. It was parked on the shoulder, half-angled toward the trees. The headlights were off, but the taillights glowed faintly, like they'd been left on too long. McCarthy pulled up behind it. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "That's his unit number." Ruiz called it in, but dispatch said something strange. "We're not picking up that transponder." "According to our system, that cruiser's in impound." McCarthy frowned. That can't be right. He got out first. I followed, the gravel crunching under my boots. The night air felt thick, too quiet, like the world had muted itself. Even the crickets were silent. The cruiser was still running, engine idling soft and low. I could see condensation fogging the inside of the windshield, as if someone had been breathing in there. McCarthy tapped the glass with his flashlight. "Daniels?" No answer. He opened the door. The dome light came on, spilling pale light across the seat. The car was empty. The keys were in the ignition, engine humming, radio on channel 1. Only one thing stood out. The driver's seat was pushed way back. Daniels was tall. Sure, but this looked like someone bigger had been in there. Ruiz leaned in. "You smell that?" I did. It wasn't gas or oil or anything mechanical. It was faintly sweet. Wrongly sweet, like decayed fruit left in the sun too long. There was something else, too. On the steering wheel, faint impressions, finger marks. Like someone had gripped it hard. McCarthy killed the engine and called it in again. But this time, when dispatch responded, their voice broke with static halfway through. Ruiz turned toward the woods. "You hear that?" "I did." A faint sound like a low whine. At first I thought it was the wind. Then it changed. It became more rhythmic, wet, ragged, like breathing. McCarthy swept his flashlight across the tree line, but the beam hit nothing. The sound stopped. Then we all felt it, the vibration. Subtle, but there. Like a low hum beneath the ground, pulsing through the gravel and up through our boots. "Let's wrap this up," Ruiz muttered. We tagged the car, towed it, logged everything. Standard procedure. But as the tow truck pulled away, I caught one last look in the side mirror, and I swear I saw someone sitting in the back seat, just for a moment, then gone. We got back to the station around 3 a.m. The log said the car had been impounded at 3:47, but by 6 the next morning, there were 3 new 911 calls, all from the same area, all describing the same cruiser. At first, the supervisor thought it was a prank, but when we checked the impound lot, Daniels' cruiser was still there. Same dents, same dust, same tag we'd placed on it. And yet, drivers kept seeing it, always idling by the woods, always gone by the time we got there. For the next 4 nights, we sent patrols. Nothing. But every time they left, dispatch would get another call minutes later. The same car, same spot. By then, word had spread through the station. The joke started. Guys calling it Daniel's Ghost Ride. But nobody laughed for long. Because one by one, the officers who went to check it out started calling in sick. McCarthy didn't come back for 2 days. When he did, he looked wrong. He said he'd been hearing a low humming in his house at night. Said he woke up one morning to find his cruiser idling in the driveway, keys still hanging by the door. Ruiz transferred out of state. Didn't even pack half his things, and me? I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear that faint idling sound in the back of my head. I started to wonder if maybe the car wasn't what was showing up. Maybe it was something in the car, something that had never left that night. On the 5th night, I was on desk duty when a call came in. An older man, voice shaking. He said he'd pulled over near the woods after seeing flashing lights. Thought an officer needed help. But when he got close, he realized the cruiser was empty. He said the driver's side door was open, and there was a police radio lying on the ground. Still whispering static. "Did you touch anything, sir?" I asked. He hesitated. "No, but the radio said something. What did it say?" There was a pause. Then he whispered, "It said, 'I can't see you, but you can see me.'" My hand went cold. "Where are you now?" He said, "Still here." "It's right in front of me." The line cut. Patrols were sent within minutes. When they got there, there was nothing. No car. No man, just tire marks in the dirt, fresh ones, leading straight into the trees. We followed the tracks the next morning. They went deep into the woods, twisting and cutting through places a car shouldn't be able to go. Then, halfway down an old service road, they just stopped, like the vehicle had vanished mid-roll. We've stopped responding to those calls now. Officially, we list them as misidentified units. Unofficially, nobody wants to go near that highway anymore. Daniels' cruiser is still in the impound lot, sealed and locked. But sometimes, when I walk past, I hear it ticking, like the engine's still cooling. And once, I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks, but I swear I saw the red glow of taillights reflected on the concrete wall. Even though the keys weren't in the ignition, sometimes I think Daniels didn't disappear. I think maybe he's still out there, trapped in that endless loop, driving that same road, waiting for backup that will never come. And maybe, if you're unlucky enough to drive past mile marker 43 on a foggy night, you might see those taillights ahead of you, flickering, waiting. Just don't stop, because if you do, you might not drive away alone. Most people don't realize how quiet a dispatch room gets at night. There's a hum from the equipment, the soft tick of a wall clock, maybe the occasional squawk of static from a radio. But underneath all that, there's silence. A heavy watching kind of silence. That's where I've been spending most of my nights lately. Alone, staring at glowing monitors, trying not to think about Daniels. After the cruiser sightings, the department started rotating night dispatchers, just to make sure nobody was alone too long. Too many people had been reporting strange noises on the open channels, feedback, phantom transmissions, echoes of their own voices. The kind of thing you could write off as interference, until it happens again and again. I was working the Thursday night shift when I first heard it. Channel 12. That frequency has been dead for years. It was retired after the department upgraded to the new digital band. But when Daniels went missing, someone, God knows why, decided to reopen it for the search operations. It became his channel, and ever since then, nobody's touched it, at least not willingly. It was around 2:14 in the morning. The other dispatchers were half asleep at their desks. I was checking reports, sipping coffee that had gone cold, when I heard the faint hiss of static break through my headset. I looked down. Channel 12. At first, it was just noise, random interference like the sound of wind through a mic. But then it changed. There was rhythm, pattern, breathing, slow, uneven, inhale, exhale, pause, inhale again. I froze. My fingers hovered over the mute switch, but I didn't touch it. I just listened. It didn't sound mechanical. It sounded human. Unit 43, I said quietly. Identify yourself. No response. Just that steady breathing. Daniels, is that you? The line crackled. Just a faint shift like someone adjusting a mic. Then the breathing grew closer, louder. I swear, for a moment I could almost feel it. Like it wasn't coming from the headset. It was in the room with me. Then it stopped. The channel went dead. I sat there, staring at the waveform on my monitor, waiting for something, anything, to come back. But there was nothing. When I told the supervisor, he brushed it off. Said it was probably a cross-frequency leak from an outside signal. These old bands pick up all kinds of garbage, he said. But that night, every dispatcher heard it. At random times, Channel 12 would flicker on, just long enough for someone to catch that same breathing pattern. Never longer than a few seconds, never overlapping with any other transmission. And every time, it sounded the same, slow, labored, like someone trying to keep quiet while hiding. One of the younger dispatchers, Kelly, started keeping a log. She marked every instance, every timestamp. By the third night, she noticed something. The breathing always started at 2:14 a.m. Exactly. No variation. It would last for 47 seconds, then stop. We tried tracing the signal, but it didn't make sense. It wasn't coming from any registered unit. No external tower, no handheld, no repeater. The source code just came up as null, the same designation used for disconnected units, which means it was transmitting from nowhere. By the fifth night, things got worse. Kelly had gone home sick, so it was just me and a guy named Martin covering the board. We were both jittery from too much caffeine, trying to stay busy. But right on time, 2:14, Channel 12 lit up again. Martin looked at me, half smiling. "Your friend's back." I didn't respond. The breathing came through, louder this time. You could hear the rasp of each inhale, the soft whistle of air through teeth. Then a voice, faint, like someone whispering from the bottom of a well. "Dispatch." Martin's eyes went wide. "Did you hear that?" I nodded slowly, my hand shaking as I turned up the gain. "Repeat," I said. "Identify yourself." The static shifted. Then, in that same quiet, trembling voice, "Where am I?" It was Daniels. It had to be. "Daniels, this is dispatch," I said. "We're receiving your transmission. Can you give us your location?" Silence. Then, a sound I'll never forget. It was him breathing again, but this time, there was something else underneath it. A faint scraping, like metal dragging across concrete. "Daniels," I said again. "Do you copy?" He whispered something I couldn't understand. A name, maybe. Then the feed distorted, high-pitched, painful. I ripped off my headset as the sound tore through the room. When it finally stopped, the monitors were flickering. Channel 12 went black. Martin swore under his breath. "Jesus, what the hell was that?" I looked at the timestamp. 2:14:47, exactly 47 seconds. The next day, tech support tried to analyze the audio. They said the frequency pattern didn't match any known radio format. Like someone was transmitting through static, not from it, one of them said. By the end of the week, Channel 12 had turned into something we all dreaded. Nobody wanted to be wearing their headset when it lit up. One dispatcher even unplugged hers completely, but ignoring it didn't help, because even without the headsets on, you could still hear it, faintly, through the walls, through the floor, like it had bled into the building itself. We filed it as equipment malfunction. That's what the report says, but every single one of us knows the truth. We started hearing more than breathing. Whispers. Sometimes words, sometimes just fragmented sounds. One night I heard my own name, clear as day. Another time, I swear I heard crying. I tried to tell myself it was just feedback looping through an open mic, but when I checked the logs, there were no open transmissions on any channel. Only 12. The weirdest part was how personal it began to feel. Like whatever was coming through knew who was listening. Martin said one night the voice told him to turn around. He did and swore he saw someone standing in the reflection of the control glass. But when he looked back, there was no one there. We brought it up to the captain. He ordered Channel 12 permanently disabled, locked out of the system. For a while, it worked. The nights were quiet again, but a month later, during routine maintenance, one of the new techs opened the frequency logs. Channel 12 was still active, transmissions every night. Same time, 47 seconds long. No dispatcher was receiving them. No one was responding, they were just going out. The tech traced the origin. He said it wasn't coming from inside the building anymore. It was bouncing between towers, shifting, jumping, never landing long enough to track, like something searching for a signal. 2 weeks later, a trucker called 911 around 2:15 a.m. Said he was driving past mile marker 43 and picked up an open police transmission on his CB radio. He didn't know what it was, but he said it sounded like a man gasping for air. Then, clear as day, the voice said, "This is Unit 43, I can see you." The line cut out right after. I didn't sleep that night. Now, sometimes when I drive home past the old tower, my radio will flicker for just a second. Channel 12 will light up, and I'll hear it again. That soft, labored breathing. Inhale, exhale, pause. Like someone sitting right next to me, listening to every word I say. It started with the 911 calls. Not just one or two, 6 of them. All in the same week. Each one came in around the same time, between 2:50 and 3:15 a.m. The voices on the other end were all different. Truckers, families, a night shift nurse, but they were saying the same thing. They'd been driving down Route 19, near the old rest area that had been shut down for years, and they swore they saw children playing out there, in the middle of the asphalt. No cars, no lights, just small shapes moving back and forth in the dark. At first I thought it was a prank. You'd be surprised how many people call dispatch to report weird stuff. Ghost lights, people in costumes, sometimes even coyotes they think are demons. But these calls, they didn't sound like jokes. I remember one in particular. It came in at 3:07 a.m. on a Tuesday. The man's voice was shaking. He said, There's kids out there. I swear to God, they're just playing." In the dark, I asked him how many. He said he counted 3, maybe 4. One of them was rolling a ball. I told him to stay in his vehicle. I radioed a patrol car. When the deputy arrived, there was nothing. Just cracked pavement, weeds growing through the concrete, and the faint hum of highway lights. No children. No ball. We filed the report, marked it as unfounded. But the next night, another call came in, then another. And then, it wasn't just the same rest area, it was always that rest area. Every report said the same thing. Small figures, moving near the center of the lot. Laughing sometimes, playing with something round. One caller even claimed he saw a swing set. There's never been a swing set there. By the 4th night, the sheriff's office sent me out to see for myself. I wasn't a cop, I was dispatch. But I'd been working there long enough that they trusted me to tag along. Maybe they just wanted someone who'd keep their mouth shut. We rolled up around 2:55 a.m. The sky was a dull silver, the kind that comes right before dawn. The rest area sat off a curve in the highway, surrounded by trees that looked black and wet from the dew. The place had been shut down years ago, cracks in the pavement, broken lights, graffiti everywhere. But there was something strange about how still it was. No sound, not even crickets. I remember stepping out of the cruiser, feeling the cold hit my chest. The deputy with me, Miller, clicked on his flashlight and started walking toward the center of the lot. "See anything?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just moved the light in slow arcs, scanning the cracked asphalt. There was nothing there. No kids, no ball, no movement, and yet I could feel something. The air felt heavy, like it does before a storm. Every sound seemed dampened, swallowed up by the night. Then I heard it, a faint tap, like a small, hollow thud echoing from the far side of the lot. Miller froze. He swung his light toward the sound, but it didn't reach far enough. "Probably a rock," he said quietly, but his voice didn't sound convinced. Another tap. Closer this time. I took a few steps forward, peering through the dark. That's when I saw it. Something round, pale, rolling slowly across the ground. A ball. It stopped near my boot. For a second, I thought about picking it up, but something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't made of rubber or plastic. It looked soft, like leather that had been sitting in the sun too long. I crouched down. My flashlight hit it directly. The surface was cracked, stained, and stitched. It wasn't a ball. It was something sewn together. I backed up fast. "Miller," I whispered. He was still scanning the edge of the lot. Then, all at once, the flashlight caught something. Movement, small shapes, children, maybe 5 or 6 of them, standing about 20 feet away, just at the edge of the darkness. They weren't playing. They were still. Too still. Their clothes looked old, torn, like something from a thrift store pile. One of them was holding what looked like a stick. Another had long hair that hung over her face. Miller called out, "Hey, you kids all right?" No answer. He took a few steps forward. The beam of his flashlight trembled slightly in his hand. "Where are your parents?" he asked. That's when I noticed something was off. Their faces. They weren't right. The light hit one of them just enough for me to see. His mouth was open, too wide, like his jaw didn't sit properly. His eyes were dark, completely black, reflecting nothing. The girl next to him turned her head toward me, and I swear to God her skin looked gray. Like concrete dust. They all just stood there, staring. Then the ball rolled again. Only this time it didn't move from the ground. It rolled uphill, back toward them. Miller froze. "What the hell?" Before either of us could move, the flashlight started to flicker. The sound of static buzzed faintly through the radio. Then, clear as anything, a child's voice came through. "Play with us." I turned toward the cruiser. The radio light was blinking, even though it wasn't tuned to any channel. The voice came again, louder this time. "Play with us." Miller grabbed my arm. "We're leaving." We backed toward the car slowly. I kept my eyes on those figures the whole time. They didn't follow us. They just watched. But as soon as Miller opened the driver's door, the radio erupted with noise, laughter, overlapping voices. Static, all mixed together. I slammed the door shut, and the sound cut off instantly. Silence. When we looked back toward the lot, it was empty. No kids, no ball, nothing. Just the sound of wind moving through the trees. We didn't speak the whole drive back. When we filed the report, we agreed to keep it simple. No visual confirmation. Possible misidentification. That kind of thing. But neither of us went near that rest area again. A few nights later, another call came in. Different voice. Same time. A woman said she saw a group of children on the asphalt, sitting in a circle. She said they were passing something between them, but she couldn't tell what. Then, she said one of them turned to face her and smiled. Her voice cracked when she said it. She swore his teeth were too many. After that, we stopped sending units out there. The sheriff had the place fenced off, officially citing unsafe conditions. But the calls never stopped. Even now. Years later, every few months we'll get one. Same time, same story. Children playing in the dark, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, always around 3 a.m. And every time someone calls, they mention the same detail. They say there's a ball rolling across the pavement. Only this time, it's glowing, like something alive is inside it. I don't take those calls anymore. I switched to daytime shifts after what happened to Miller. He quit a year later. Said he couldn't sleep. Said he kept hearing children outside his house at night. The last time I talked to him, he said he went back there just once to prove it was all in his head. He never told me what he saw. But the next morning, his cruiser was found parked at that same rest area. Driver's door open, radio still on. Channel filled with static. And in the middle of the lot, sitting on the cracked asphalt, was a ball, still rolling. The first time I set foot on that lot, I thought I knew what I was walking into. Abandoned rest area. Cracked asphalt, broken light poles, rusted signs. Nothing that could make a sane person second-guess a 3 a.m. patrol. But the thing is, you don't ever know that kind of place until it tells you. I was called out around 2:45 a.m. That's usually the quietest hour for troopers. Highway mostly empty, just the occasional truck humming past. But that night the air felt wrong. Cold, but not like winter cold. Heavy. Pressed down on my shoulders the moment I stepped out of the cruiser. Dispatch gave me the report before I arrived. Another driver had called. Same story. Small children playing in the center of the lot. No parents, no vehicles, just moving shapes. I didn't see anything at first. The lot was empty as far as I could tell. Moonlight spilled over the asphalt, reflecting off scattered debris. Rusted signs leaned at angles, a few weeds pushing through the cracks. The place was dead, but then I noticed them. Tiny glass beads. They were scattered across the cracked asphalt, catching the moonlight like faint, glittering eyes. I crouched down. There had to be hundreds. Tiny, perfectly round, each one reflecting the pale light in a way that made it seem alive. I scanned the area. No footprints. No tire marks. No disturbance in the dirt or weeds. How did they get here? I walked slowly through the lot, flashlight sweeping every corner. That's when I saw it. A small shoe half buried in gravel. One of those tiny sneakers kids wear, blue with a cartoon character on the side. I crouched and picked it up, turning it over in my hands. It was old. Dirt crusted into the sole. But there was no one around. No tracks leading up to it, no indication of how it had arrived. I called dispatch. I found a child's shoe. Small blue. No tracks. Copy. Static on the line, then a quiet acknowledgement. Copy, trooper. Proceed with caution. I felt my stomach tighten. The lot was completely silent except for the hum of the highway. I could hear the distant engine of my cruiser and the occasional whistle of wind through the broken signs. But it wasn't the sound of nature that set me on edge. It was the feeling that the space around me was watching. I dropped the shoe back to the ground, careful not to disturb the beads. They formed no pattern I could recognize, just scattered, almost deliberately. I moved forward, sweeping my flashlight across the empty lot. And then I noticed it. Movement at the edge of my vision. Quick, subtle, gone before I could focus. I spun my light in that direction. Nothing. Just shadows, leaning, bending with the uneven ground. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The lot had a reputation for pranks, weird noises, and local legends. I'd laughed them off before, but now, standing there in the cold, I felt that old, uneasy feeling I'd felt as a kid in dark hallways, the one that tells you you're not supposed to be alone. I circled the area, paying attention to the beads. Each step I took, I thought I saw them shift, not move naturally, not like wind or someone's hand, but as if the very light that hit them was bending around something I couldn't see. Then I saw it. A tiny shadow, smaller than any human child, darting between the light poles. I froze. My hand went to the radio. Dispatch! I think there's something here. Someone, or something, moving near the far edge of the lot. Static. Then a whisper, soft enough I almost thought it was in my head. Play. I spun in a circle. Nothing. I took a cautious step forward, keeping my flashlight low to avoid spooking whatever it was. And that's when I realized the beads were all gone from the area I'd already walked through, like they'd moved. Not naturally, not by wind, not by gravity. They were gone. I scanned again, heart hammering. The shadows at the edge of the lot deepened, blending into the trees beyond. My flashlight caught them for a fraction of a second. Tiny figures, small, barely taller than a toddler. But their proportions weren't right. Arms too long, heads slightly too large, movements jerky. Not children, not fully human, I swallowed. Dispatch, I don't know what I'm seeing. No tracks, no footprints, but a sound cut through the night. A soft, hollow tapping. A laugh or maybe a giggle. High-pitched, delicate. I spun toward the noise, light cutting through the darkness. Nothing. The shoe. The beads. The shadows. All gone. But I could still feel them. Watching. Waiting. I stepped toward where I had seen the figures. My flashlight caught something shiny. More beads! A small line leading toward the edge of the lot, toward the trees. I followed them cautiously. Each step made my boots crunch on gravel. Each step seemed louder than it should be. The beads formed a faint, irregular path. I noticed small depressions in the dirt here and there, but nothing consistent. No footprints, no tire marks, nothing that made sense. The moonlight caught the edge of something else, a piece of cloth. Another tiny shoe, this one red, lying on its side. The laces were untied, frayed. I knelt down. No tracks. No indication of where it had come from or gone. Then I heard it. A soft shuffle from the tree line. Almost imperceptible. I froze. My mind raced through every protocol I'd ever been trained on. I considered calling for backup, but something kept me rooted to the spot. Not fear exactly. Something deeper. A compulsion to see, to understand. The shuffling got louder, closer. I flicked my flashlight toward the noise. Nothing. And then I saw it. A figure, small, crouched at the edge of the lot, its back to me, head tilted in a way that seemed unnatural. Long hair hanging down, swaying slightly even though there was no wind. I whispered, "Hey, are you okay?" No answer. I stepped closer and the figure slowly turned its head. Not like a person turning, more like a puppet. The face was pale, grayish, eyes hollow. Mouth slightly open. I stumbled back, heart racing. Then it darted, fast, unnatural, toward the trees. I ran after it, flashlight swinging. The beads crunched under my boots, but the figure disappeared before I could reach the tree line. I stopped, breathing hard, chest tight, heart pounding. Nothing. Just the faint moonlight, broken asphalt, and silence. I scanned the ground. The beads were still there, tiny, glittering, lining a path that led nowhere. The shoe I'd picked up before was gone, no footprints. No indication that anyone or anything had been there. I got back in my cruiser, shaking. Called dispatch, reported what I'd seen. They told me to wait for backup. But as I waited, I noticed something on the passenger seat. More beads! A small, pale, hand-sized collection like someone had set them there deliberately. I reached to pick them up, and the car door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, heart in my throat, no wind. No one near the cruiser, just silence. I drove back to the station without a word. The beads stayed in my pocket. I kept them there. I couldn't throw them away. Not yet. Later, when we reviewed the calls, the shoe, the beads, everything, the supervisors asked questions. Standard protocol stuff. But no one had any answers. The lot had been abandoned for years. No children, no tracks, nothing that could explain what I'd seen. Only the scattered glass beads and the tiny shoes. Even now, weeks later, I can't stop thinking about them. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the figures crouched at the edge of the lot, waiting, watching. And sometimes, in my dreams, the beads roll across the cracked asphalt. One by one toward me, I couldn't stop thinking about those beads. Not after the last night at the abandoned lot. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them glinting in the pale moonlight, scattered like tiny eyes watching me. The shoe, the shadowed figures. Everything about that place felt wrong, but something inside me kept pulling me back. So, I went back. I took my cruiser the next night, arriving around 2:50 a.m. The lot was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat. I switched on my body cam, double-checked my flashlight, and stepped onto the cracked asphalt. The smell of old tar and wet concrete hit me immediately. It was stronger than I remembered, almost choking in its sharpness. I scanned the lot, slow, deliberate, trying not to breathe too loudly. No children, no shadows, no sound except the distant hum of the highway. And yet, I could feel them there. I could feel something watching from the edges. The beads were scattered again, tiny, glass, glinting under the weak moonlight. There were more this time, hundreds of them, spread across the cracked asphalt like a constellation of eyes waiting for me to look closer. I knelt down to inspect them, my gloves brushing over their smooth surfaces. A few reflected the moonlight so perfectly that for a second I thought I saw faces trapped inside. Pale, small, staring. I shook my head. No, you're imagining it. I moved forward slowly, following the beads. The body cam captured the trail as I bent down, one hand hovering above the ground. My flashlight flickered in the soft wind, casting long shadows that twisted across the pavement. Then I saw it, another tiny shoe, red this time, partially hidden under a crack in the asphalt. The laces were untied, frayed, almost as if it had been tossed there in a hurry. I reached for it, and the hairs on my arms stood on end. Something shifted. I froze. The air seemed heavier, thicker, pressing against my chest. My flashlight flickered again, and then I heard it. A whisper. Soft, breathless, almost playful. "Found you." I spun toward the sound. Empty lot. Shadows bent at impossible angles, the trees trembling slightly as if they had a life of their own. My heart slammed against my ribs, my hands trembling on the flashlight. I reminded myself I was a trained officer. I had to remain calm. Just a prank, I told myself. Someone left toys and beads, sneaking back into the darkness to laugh. Just some local kids playing a joke, except there were no kids. None ever. I crouched again, keeping my body low, flashlight sweeping in short arcs. I picked up a few beads, slipping them into my pocket. They were smooth, cold, heavier than I expected. The shoe stayed where it was. "Found you," the voice whispered again, closer this time. I froze. It wasn't coming from anywhere specific. Not from the trees, not from the shadows, not from the lot itself. It was everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around me, brushing my ears, settling into the back of my neck. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Hello?" I called softly. My own voice sounded thin, like it couldn't fill the empty lot. Silence. I moved slowly toward the red shoe, body cam catching my hand as I bent down to pick it up. And that's when it happened. A soft giggle. High-pitched, unmistakably childish. "Found you." The words brushed against my ear. I jerked upright. My flashlight shone directly across the lot, catching something or someone at the edge of the asphalt. Small, pale, still crouched, watching. I could feel the eyes on me, though the figure's face was hidden. The shadow of hair hung over its head, swaying slightly, though there was no wind. My heart raced. Every instinct screamed to run. But my feet felt glued to the ground. I bent down, hand trembling toward the shoe. "Found you," the whisper repeated, almost as if mocking me. My flashlight flickered violently, then steadied. I bent closer. The body cam recorded every second, every twitch of my hands, every shallow breath. I reached for the shoe and felt something brush my fingers. Not the shoe, something cold. Something soft, tiny, and weightless, but impossibly firm, like a hand. I jerked back, nearly losing my balance. The shoe fell from my grasp. I scrambled to my feet, scanning the lot. Empty. Shadows bent and twisted at the edges, but no one there. The beads at my feet trembled, rattling slightly as if stirred by an invisible breath. And then, slowly, they began rolling. Not across the pavement, not following the wind. They moved toward me. Hundreds of them, rolling silently, shifting with impossible purpose. "Found you," the voice whispered again, directly behind me. I spun. Nothing. No movement. No figure. Just the empty lot, the cracked asphalt, the flickering moonlight, the faint hum of the distant highway. My body cam captured everything. Every second of me panicking, every step backward, every glance over my shoulder. But when I reviewed the footage later, it would show something even more disturbing. The shoe. The beads, my own reflection in the lens, but behind me, a shadow too small, too slight to be human, crouched in the corner of the lot, its head tilted, watching. I ran to the cruiser, heart pounding, flashlight swinging wildly. The lot seemed to stretch, the edges shifting as if alive. I glanced back once. The beads formed a line, leading away from the asphalt, pointing toward the dark tree line. The whispers didn't follow, just the echo of the last word, found you. I slammed the cruiser door shut, locked it, and drove back to the station without a word. The beads and the shoe stayed behind. I didn't touch them. Didn't want to. Later, when we reviewed the body cam footage, the techs were puzzled. There was nothing unusual recorded. The lot looked empty, just cracked asphalt and weeds. No shadow, no figure, no sign of the small hand that had brushed my fingers, except the shoe was gone. The beads had shifted too. They were no longer scattered across the lot, but gathered at the edge of the asphalt in a small, deliberate circle. No footprints. No tire marks. No sign of anyone or anything having moved them. I couldn't explain it. Nobody could. I tried to convince myself it was my mind playing tricks. Stress, adrenaline, the stories about the lot, the legends, anything. But that voice, that touch, that tiny whisper, I couldn't forget it. Days later, I went back. Only once, just to confirm nothing had been left behind. But when I arrived, the lot was empty. No beads, no shoes, nothing. Only the faint echo of laughter carried on the cold night air. I didn't stay. I didn't want to, but I could feel it. Watching, waiting, playing, always playing. Every time I close my eyes now, I see those tiny figures crouched at the edge of the lot. Shadows bending in impossible ways. The beads glitter in the pale moonlight, rolling slowly, deliberately toward me. And I hear it, soft, high-pitched, chilling in its innocence. Found you. Even now, in the daylight, I can't shake it. The memory sticks to my mind like frost on glass. Tiny, cold, weightless, but impossibly heavy. I can still feel that touch, that whisper, that impossible presence in the shadows, and I know, if I ever go back, it will be waiting. It started just after midnight. Quiet night at the dispatch center. Only a handful of calls trickling in, nothing unusual. The kind of night where the hum of fluorescent lights becomes louder than any actual emergency. Then the call came. The woman's voice was sharp but calm. Panicked but measured. 911, there's been a crash, she said. I need help. Someone's dead. I glanced at the screen. The number wasn't local, but the GPS showed a stretch of highway about 15 miles east of the station. I jotted it down and relayed it to the nearest unit. Copy, said the officer. En route. The woman described the scene. A sedan flipped over near a bridge, smoke rising from the engine. She could hear someone crying nearby, a faint groan from a man trapped inside. Her voice was trembling now, almost breaking, but she kept it together enough to give directions, landmarks, mile markers. Every detail sounded plausible. Then, nothing. Seconds later, the phone rang again. Same number. Same woman. 911, I need help, she said again. But this time, her tone was different. Softer. Older. The panic was gone, replaced by this strange, quiet dread. I frowned at the call display. Same number, same voice. But the location she gave wasn't 15 miles east anymore. It was downtown, near the old railway tracks, nearly 20 minutes in the opposite direction. I froze. Ma'am, I'm going to send help, I said cautiously, though the hair on my arms was standing up. Where exactly? She interrupted me. There's been a crash. A man. He's lying there. I don't think he can move. I'm scared, she said, almost whispering now. But this isn't the first one. I saw another before. They never get help in time. My hands went cold. Something about the phrasing, the certainty in her tone set every nerve on edge. Ma'am, what do you mean another? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause, the line almost silent except for a faint static buzz. Then she said, It's happening again. I called you before. I don't know why I'm calling again. I don't know the time. The place just, it's happening. You have to listen. Her words were fragmented, hurried, almost mechanical, and yet clear. I kept her on the line, switching between dispatch channels, trying to verify locations, units responding, anything. But there was nothing. No report, no accident, no calls from other citizens. It was as if the crash she described never existed. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was a prank, someone with too much free time, or a misdialed emergency. But there was something in her voice that wasn't acting. Not fear exactly, but desperation. And an odd familiarity, like she'd been here before. I asked again, "Ma'am, can you tell me your location?" "Not exactly," she whispered. I see it. I see the place, the car, but it's shifting. I'm moving, but I'm still here. You'll see. You'll understand. They always see me. You have to answer the call." The line went silent for a moment. Static filled the headset. Then another call came in. Same number, same voice. This time, the location was the original highway crash she'd described 15 miles east. But something was off. She was calm again. Almost too calm, describing the scene as if she were narrating an old story. I could hear the officer approaching the original location over the radio. "Dispatch, I'm on scene. There's no accident here. The road's clear. Nothing. Repeat, nothing." I swallowed hard. "Ma'am," I said, trying to keep control, "I can't send help if you keep changing the location. Can you describe anything else?" She paused and the line trembled. The faintest whisper of something in the background, metal scraping, a low groan, a child's cry maybe, or just my imagination, filled the silence. Then she said softly, "They're waiting. They always wait. They move. You can't see them yet, but you'll know. Just listen." I shivered. I could feel a tension in my shoulders, the kind that creeps up slowly until your back aches and your fingertips go numb. I tried to maintain professionalism, but the hair on my neck stood up. The calls continued like that. Rapid, overlapping, impossible. Each one the same number, same voice, different locations, different times. She would describe a crash that had already happened, a crash that would happen, a crash that never happened at all. The coordinates didn't match roads, landmarks shifted mid-sentence, and her voice sometimes carried an echo, almost as if two versions of her were speaking simultaneously. I started recording everything, leaving the line open, logging the GPS coordinates, noting the times, trying to track patterns, but the numbers never added up. Minutes passed in ways that didn't make sense. Coordinates repeated. Mile markers overlapped. Street names changed mid-call. It was like reality itself was folding around her words. At some point, I stopped trying to rationalize. I stopped trying to make sense. I just listened and I realized she wasn't asking for help. Not exactly. She was warning. The voice would slip in and out of clarity, repeating certain phrases. "Don't go. Don't answer. They're there. You'll see them." I told myself it was stress, long hours, lack of sleep. But the repetition, the exact phrasing, the strange familiarity, it gnawed at me. I called my supervisor, but they were skeptical. "Check the logs," they said. "If it's a prank, the number will pop up in the system." It didn't. The number existed. The call logs showed it. Every duplicate, every overlapping timestamp. But there was no subscriber. No address, no traceable identity, just the line. The calls went on for hours, overlapping, echoing, repeating. Sometimes I could swear I heard my own voice answering back through the headset. Not my voice exactly, but a faint reflection, mimicking, like the line itself had a memory. I stayed at my desk, heart hammering, trying to log everything, trying to stay professional. But as the night wore on, the voice began to describe things I hadn't seen, details of the dispatch center itself. The blinking lights on my console, the way my chair squeaked when I shifted, the mug of coffee I'd left half full. I felt my stomach turn. My pulse spiked. She could see me. Somehow. Somehow, from that line, she knew exactly where I was, what I was doing. And yet I knew she wasn't real. Not entirely. Hours blurred. I stopped tracking time. The calls didn't stop and the voice became more insistent. They're moving through the roads. The crashes aren't random. You'll hear them. You'll see them. They wait for the calls to end. Don't hang up. Every instinct screamed at me to hang up. But something, a compulsion I couldn't explain, kept my hand hovering over the receiver, listening. Then, finally, she stopped. Silence, except for the faintest static hum. And in that silence, I felt it. Not fear exactly, something heavier, something patient, something that had been waiting through the night for me to listen, for me to understand. I looked at the clock. Hours had passed. The calls had filled the night, but there was no trace of any accident anywhere. Not the highway, not the downtown railway, not anywhere the GPS had shown. It was as if the crashes existed only in her voice, only in the space between the calls. When the morning shift arrived, I logged everything, wrote reports, tried to make sense. Supervisors read through my notes, shook their heads, chalked it up to a prank or exhaustion or the stress of being a dispatcher at 3 a.m., but I knew better. Because the calls, they weren't over. Even now, weeks later, I get a strange sense when the phone rings. A pause before the caller speaks. A faint echo. That same voice. Not asking for help anymore. Not reporting accidents. Just reminding me, they're waiting. I keep the headset close, the logs backed up, the recording's safe. I don't answer unless absolutely necessary. And even then, I feel the same chill crawl up my spine. Because I know somewhere, somehow, the next call will come. Same number. Same voice. Different time. Different location, and I'll be listening, because if I don't, if I hang up, I have a feeling I won't get another chance. When the morning light hit the dispatch center, I didn't feel any relief. I felt heavier, like the night had left something behind, pressing down on my chest. The headset still sat on my desk, the logs blinking in the computer like tiny warnings. I hadn't touched them all night, but I knew what was waiting inside. The calls, the overlapping voices, the impossible timestamps. I started reviewing the recordings first thing. Every call had been logged, every number, every second, captured and stored. I told myself it would make sense once I went through them carefully. Numbers, coordinates, durations, something concrete, something real I could analyze. Something to prove I hadn't completely lost my mind. But it didn't make sense. The first thing I noticed was the timestamps. The calls from the duplicate number didn't follow any logical order. A call logged at 12:03 a.m. described an accident at mile marker 14 on the East Highway. Seconds later, a call from the same number, same voice, detailed a crash at the railway tracks downtown. That alone was strange, but what really shook me was the metadata embedded in the files themselves. One file showed it was recorded at 12:03 a.m., exactly as it appeared in the logs. The next file, though only seconds later in sequence, was time-stamped hours earlier, 3 hours earlier. In other words, a call that shouldn't have existed yet had already been recorded. I froze at my desk. My fingers hovered over the mouse. I rewound, played it again. The voice was identical. The same tonal shifts, the same phrases, but the background, subtle differences, a creak in the floor, a far-off siren, the faintest whisper of static that wasn't in the other recording. I leaned back and tried to breathe. Maybe it's a glitch. Computers sometimes mess up timestamps. That's all. A malfunction in the logging software. I told myself that over and over. I moved to the next set of files. Same thing. Overlapping calls. The same voice describing the same events. Sometimes the events hadn't happened yet. Sometimes they were supposed to have already happened. The more I listened, the more the chronology unraveled. Every sequence contradicted the last, and yet, the details were consistent. Her voice never faltered. Every word, every pause, every tremor in her tone, perfectly aligned with a real emergency, even when it was impossible. I checked the GPS coordinates embedded in the recordings. Some were correct. Some led nowhere. Empty fields, streets that didn't exist, highways that had been decommissioned years ago. I pulled up satellite maps. Nothing matched. But the descriptions in her voice made them feel real. She talked about landmarks, streetlights, mile markers, and signs. I could almost see the scenes she described. even though the places weren't there. It was like listening to someone recalling memories that didn't exist. Memories that were alive while I listened, forming reality as the words unfolded. I ran my hand over my face. The first panic of disbelief faded, replaced by something colder. Unease, dread, the kind that roots itself in your chest and doesn't let go. I started cross-referencing the logs with reports from officers who had been dispatched. Some responded, found nothing. Some didn't respond or were told the call was a duplicate. No matter what, no physical evidence ever matched what she described, except one thing. The feelings, I can't explain it. When I listened to her describe the crashes, even ones that couldn't exist, I could feel the fear in the words. A man pinned under twisted metal, smoke rising. Someone screaming. Not just the person she spoke of, but the echo of terror, heavy and metallic, like it settled in the air. I could feel the panic, the helplessness, the weight of those moments even though I knew no one was there. And it wasn't just me. Others on the night shift reported it too. After the initial panic wore off, they described the same sensation. The hair on the back of their neck rising, a pressure in their chests. A sudden awareness that something unseen was moving in the corners of their vision. I focused on one specific recording, time-stamped 12:03 a.m., the one supposedly first in the log. I played it through carefully, analyzing every second. Her voice was calm, measured, telling of a man trapped under a car, smoke curling around him. A description of the scene followed. The bridge's iron beams, cracked asphalt, flickering streetlight. Everything precise. The officer on call for that location, as far as records show, never arrived. There was no accident. No man under a car, nothing, I rewound. Playing the next recording. 12:04 a.m., same number, same voice, same description, but the timestamp embedded in the file read 9:01 p.m. the previous night. I stared at the monitor. My fingers were numb. My pulse throbbed in my temples. Time didn't make sense. I checked again, meticulously, going through every duplicate, every overlapping file. It was worse than I'd feared. Some calls appeared to exist before the dispatcher even answered the phone. Some described events that hadn't happened yet. Others described crashes that, by the officer's logs, had already been cleared hours before. And the voice didn't sound distorted or delayed. It sounded alive, real, watching. Every call felt immediate, urgent, personal. I leaned back and rubbed my eyes. The headset crackled softly. I leaned closer. Nothing, just static, faint. But in the static, I thought I heard her. Just a fragment of a word. Wait. I jerked back. My hand knocked over a pen, the sound echoing unnaturally in the empty room. My pulse raced. I'm imagining it. I went through the metadata again. File names, timestamps, GPS, duration, bitrate. Nothing irregular in the digital sense. Nothing that would indicate tampering, corruption, or manipulation. Yet reality itself seemed skewed. I printed a selection of the recordings, voice-to-text logs. As I read them, a pattern emerged, subtle but unmistakable. Each duplicate call referenced the previous call's details as if she remembered it perfectly, even when it hadn't occurred yet. Every crash described aligned in some way with a crash reported hours later, or had coordinates pointing to a place that would become an accident later, or had been an accident long ago. It was impossible, but I felt it in my bones. Every call, every timestamp, every file. She wasn't lying. She wasn't making it up. Something else was happening. Something I didn't understand. Something beyond logic or time. I started cross-checking reports again. Officer logs, dash cam footage. Nothing matched exactly, but slight similarities were undeniable. Minor details, almost trivial yet precise. A bent sign, a flickering traffic light, the smell of burnt rubber, a man's voice shouting from a distance. The air in the dispatch center grew heavy. I realized I hadn't breathed properly in over an hour. I leaned back in my chair, letting my fingers slide over the printed logs. The numbers didn't make sense, the files didn't make sense, but the experience did. Listening to her, tracking her, I felt the sequence of events as if they were happening in some parallel plane. A reality layered over our own, bleeding into ours, and then it clicked. Or at least I think it did. The files didn't match because time didn't match. Not just the timestamps, but the events themselves. They existed out of sequence. Past and future overlapped. She was calling from somewhere outside normal time, outside the constraints of our reality. Every duplicate call, every overlapping timestamp, every contradictory detail was evidence of it. I couldn't explain how or why, but I knew. I stayed there, staring at the logs, feeling it settle in my chest. That weight, that awareness. I could hear her voice, faint in my memory, repeating phrases I could never unhear. They're waiting. They always wait. I wanted to leave. I wanted to shut down the computer, step outside, breathe fresh air. But something, an obligation, a compulsion, kept me rooted. I needed to finish. I needed to understand. I played another recording. 12:10 a.m., same number, same voice. This one described the first crash in vivid detail. I listened carefully. My own reactions, my own voice came back to me faintly, echoing in the background, like the line remembered me as much as I remembered it. The timestamp on the file read 11:48 p.m., 12 minutes before the first call I had logged. Impossible. Yet, I could hear it. Her words, clear and precise. Real. I leaned back again, breathing shallowly. The entire night felt like it was collapsing on itself. Seconds stretched. Minutes folded into hours. The distinction between what had happened and what would happen blurred until I didn't know which side of the line I was on anymore. I shut off the recordings eventually, hands shaking, but I couldn't leave the desk, not yet. The weight of those impossible calls stayed with me. The sense that something beyond my understanding was using her voice, using the number, using the duplicate calls to reach me, or maybe everyone, to warn us or to watch. I left the logs on my desk open. I didn't touch the headset. I didn't answer any more calls that night. But I felt it. Waiting. Patient. Watching the time distortions, the files that didn't match, the sequences that made no sense. And I knew deep down that the next call would come. Same number, same voice. Different time, different place, and the files, they would never match again. The night shift always felt longer than it was, but after the duplicate calls, after the impossible timestamps, the hours stretched into something that felt elastic, like time itself was bending around the dispatch center. I sat at my console long after the last officer had signed off, the headset cold and heavy against my ears. At first it was subtle, just a whisper in the quiet moments when the radios were silent. I would glance at the call monitor, expecting a ghost of a number to flash, only to find the screen blank. The hum of the fluorescent lights became louder, sharper, until I could swear I heard the faint static of a line trying to connect itself. Then the voice came, soft, faint, the same calm, desperate tone I'd heard on the duplicate calls. Turn left now, before the lights flicker. I froze. The line was dead. No incoming calls, no phone ringing, just the whisper through the headset. I shook my head. It's nothing, I muttered to myself, though my hands were trembling. The room was empty, the night outside dark and still, the monitors reflecting my own wide-eyed face back at me. But the whisper came again. Follow the road, the one that doesn't exist. I leaned back, heart hammering. My first thought was a recording left open by mistake. But I had checked every line, every playback, nothing. The recordings on the server didn't capture this. It wasn't real, not in any conventional sense. And yet there it was, her voice, instructing, guiding, whispering directions I couldn't follow. I tried to speak, to respond. Hello, are you? Nothing, only static. A faint echo that carried the words again. Don't stop. Keep moving. Before it finds you. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I gripped the edge of my desk, trying to anchor myself in the mundane, fluorescent-lit reality of the dispatch center. But it felt thinner somehow, like the world outside was leaking into the room, seeping through the walls, carrying her voice with it. I checked the logs again. No calls, no reports, nothing. It was impossible. Yet I knew it wasn't a hallucination, not entirely. My instincts screamed it wasn't imagination. The instructions grew more specific over the hours. Directions to streets that didn't exist. Landmarks that weren't on any map. mile markers along highways that had been removed decades ago. Her voice described the curves, the stoplights, the flicker of a broken sign as if she had seen them with her own eyes. And somehow, I could picture them. Every detail, the way the shadows fell, the smell of wet asphalt, the faint hum of electricity from unseen lines overhead. I tried to rationalize it. Sleep deprivation. My brain playing tricks. Maybe someone's voice had been recorded, manipulated, but that explanation fell apart when she started mentioning things inside the dispatch center itself. The clock is wrong. Your coffee is cold. The screen flickers on the left. I froze mid-breath. I looked around. Everything she mentioned was true. My mug of coffee sitting half empty and forgotten. The faint flicker of the monitor in my peripheral vision. The wall clock ticking slightly ahead. It felt like she was inside the building with me, though I knew she couldn't be. She wasn't calling. Not technically, yet the information she gave me was immediate, intimate, and impossible. The whispers grew louder, sharper, but never aggressive. They were instructions, guidance, almost pleading. Walk to the corner, behind the sign. Do not touch the asphalt. I wanted to leave. I wanted to slam my chair back, grab my coat, and run into the empty parking lot under the cold night sky. But my legs refused to move. Every instinct screamed, don't go, but some deeper, darker curiosity rooted me to the chair. I wanted to know where she would take me, what she was pointing toward, even if it didn't exist. Time started to distort around me. The night stretched, folding in on itself. I could hear faint echoes of my own voice over the headset, fragmented and repeated, almost like the system itself had become a mirror. She whispered again, do not follow the roads you know, only the ones that shift. I understood in that moment that it wasn't directions she was giving me in the conventional sense. It was a map through something else, a plane, a layer beneath our reality, where the roads bent and the landmarks were alive. The more I listened, the more I felt my surroundings dissolve. The walls of the dispatch center didn't feel solid anymore. Shadows stretched longer than they should have, bending toward me, retreating, hiding. The lights flickered in rhythm with her whispers, pulsing with an unearthly cadence. I reached for the headset, wanting to disconnect, to silence it. But as my fingers hovered over the mute button, she whispered again, do not hang up. They can hear you. The words sank into my chest like ice. They can hear me? I tried to rationalize again. Who? What? The thought made my stomach twist. Outside, in the empty streets, in the dark corners of a world asleep, something was moving. Something was listening. And it waited for the line to go dead. I gripped the desk, the headset warm against my skin. I had never felt fear like this. Not from an accident, not from a call for help, not even from a violent scene. This was different. It wasn't physical. It was patient, persistent, creeping like fog through a crack under the door. The directions became more complex. She instructed me to visualize places that weren't real, intersections that shifted when I tried to map them in my head, buildings that existed in some sense but not in any records. I could see them faintly, like a mirage. The images lingered behind my eyes when I closed them. Step carefully. Do not look down. Follow the light that isn't there. I could almost see it, the faint glow of an impossible streetlight hovering over a road that didn't exist. I could feel the asphalt beneath my shoes in my mind, cracking and shifting with each step. And then came the whisper, softer this time, urgent. They're watching, always watching. I shivered. My arms went numb. The room was too silent, too still, and yet I felt the pressure of eyes unseen, a presence that pulsed in the air around me. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I couldn't. My curiosity, my dread, my responsibility as a dispatcher, some combination of all three, kept me rooted in place. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning anymore. The whispers continued, guiding, instructing, observing. She described places that I couldn't exist in, or at least that shouldn't exist. Yet in my mind, in the gaps between reality and imagination, I could follow them. Turn left. No, wait. The walls will move. Trust the path. Trust nothing else, I whispered back, testing my own voice. Who are you? Why? Nothing. Only a soft static hum. Then faintly, almost mournfully, Because they will take you if you do not listen. I gripped the edge of my desk until my knuckles ached. The words sank deep into my chest. I tried to understand, but comprehension was impossible. I could feel her fear, her desperation, and some strange patience. She wasn't angry, not malicious, just warning. Finally, as dawn crept into the windows of the dispatch center, her voice faded. The whispers receded, leaving only the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint buzz of the phones. I sat there, unblinking, staring at the empty monitors. The night had passed. The world seemed normal again, but the weight of what had happened pressed down on me. I knew the line would open again. I knew the number would call. I knew her voice would return during the quiet hours, guiding, instructing, and whispering about places that didn't exist. I tried to record it, tried to catch proof, but nothing ever captured the sound the way I heard it. It was always faint, just at the edge of perception, slipping through the speakers, threading itself into the static. I couldn't explain it. I still can't, and I know that when the next night comes, when the quiet hours stretch long and the world sleeps, she will return. Same voice, same number, same impossible instructions, and I will listen, because even if I can't understand the places she guides me to, or the things waiting at the end of them, I know that if I don't, the unanswered line will not remain silent forever. The end of my shift should have been simple, quiet, routine. I should have been counting down the minutes, thinking about the warm shower waiting at home, the small relief of the weekend ahead. But that night, nothing was simple, and nothing felt routine. I stayed late, longer than usual. My hands hovered over the console as I double-checked logs, trying to understand the events of the past few nights. The duplicate calls, the whispered instructions, the phantom timestamps, they didn't make sense. Not one bit of it. And yet I felt it. The memory of her voice. The roads that didn't exist. The pressure in the air as though someone, or something, was leaning in close, breathing around me. The night supervisor, Captain Harlow, came in quietly. He always moved with purpose, but that night his usual calm seemed edged with unease. He glanced at my screen, frowned, then pulled up the master logs. I watched over his shoulder as he scrolled through the entries. Dispatcher 392, he said, almost to himself. That doesn't exist. I froze. What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my chest had started to ache. Harlow shook his head. No record of any Dispatcher 392, no badge number. No scheduled shift, nothing. My mind spun. That was the number attached to every duplicate call, the voice on the line, the woman whose whispers haunted my nights. I had assumed someone had transferred a call, someone else picking up at an odd hour, but there was no Dispatcher 392. No one should have had access to the lines, I said quietly, fear tightening my throat. It wasn't logged anywhere else. He rubbed his eyes. And the calls themselves? I gestured at the console. The same number, same voice, every duplicate, every impossible timestamp, and now I'm hearing it even when there's no call active. Quiet hours, whispering directions, instructions, places that don't exist. Harlow's jaw tightened. The lines? I hesitated. We traced them back, landline, the dispatch center's own lines. He exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. The fluorescent lights flickered above us. So, you're saying the calls are coming from inside? I don't know how else to explain it, I admitted. The number shows our own system. Every trace leads here, and yet, she's not a dispatcher. 392 doesn't exist. She shouldn't exist. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, pull all the logs from the past month. Every call, every internal transfer, every timestamp. I want to see everything that touches that line. I nodded, hands trembling slightly as I started to compile the data. Each file I opened made my chest tighten further. Every call from 392 followed the same impossible patterns, overlapping timestamps, locations that didn't exist, instructions that only I seemed to hear during quiet hours, and every single trace led right back to the center, to the landline sitting on my desk. I stared at the phone. It looked ordinary. White plastic, a little scratched. Nothing about it suggested a supernatural origin. Nothing except the voice that had been whispering through it, mapping invisible roads, guiding me through places I could see in my mind but never in reality. Harlow leaned over my shoulder. "So you're telling me it's here, in this building?" But no one answered it. No one called out. No one... "I heard it," I said softly. "I was here, alone, and I know it's impossible, but I heard her. Whispering instructions, describing places, warning me about something that wasn't visible. Maybe shouldn't be visible. But it was real. I could feel it." He shook his head. "This is impossible." "I know," I whispered. "I don't know what else to say." He exhaled sharply, pacing the length of the room. "If 392 doesn't exist, then the calls..." "The landline? That means it's something inside the center. Something we can't trace in a conventional sense. And if it's been doing this for a month, manipulating time, creating events that haven't happened yet, or already happened, we're dealing with something beyond our comprehension." I pressed my hands into my face, trying to stop the tremors. "I've been reviewing the logs, Harlow. The timestamps don't make sense. Some calls exist before they should, some after. Some describe accidents that haven't happened yet, some that already happened years ago. And every time the voice, speaks with the same calm, the same precision, as if she's there, experiencing it in real time. And she's guiding me." He stopped pacing, looking at me with a grim expression. "Guiding you where?" I didn't know how to answer. Everywhere and nowhere, my mind screamed. Somewhere outside reality itself. Harlow pulled a chair close to the desk and sat heavily. "Do you have recordings?" "Everything," I said, pointing to the console. "But it doesn't capture the whispers the same way. Only I hear them like this in quiet hours. Only through the headset. It's layered. Almost like she's in the room but invisible, or in the lines, or somewhere in between." He leaned back, rubbing his forehead. "So the voice is real, but 392 isn't, and every trace leads to us." "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "And I don't know how long it's been going on before I noticed. Or if it's only now that I can perceive it because she wants me to." Harlow stared at the landline for a long time, silent. The room hummed with the quiet buzz of equipment, punctuated by the faint hum of the lights above. And then, almost imperceptibly, I thought I heard her voice again, just a breath through the headset. Softer than ever. "Don't leave." I froze. Harlow looked up, startled. The words were gone. Just the hum of the office. I swallowed hard, feeling the familiar chill creep down my spine. He stood. "We'll pull every log, cross-check every call, but I need you to leave for now. Step outside. Get some air. Sleep. You're running on fumes. This isn't healthy?" I wanted to argue, wanted to stay and continue following the impossible map she left behind. But I also knew he was right. My hands shook too much to type, my mind too frayed to make sense of the sequences anymore. I gathered my things, glancing one last time at the landline. Ordinary, cold plastic. But I knew better. I knew the weight of its silence could not be trusted. I knew she was still there, watching, waiting. I left the dispatch center slowly, each step echoing in the empty hallways. Outside, the air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of wet asphalt from earlier rain. The streetlights cast long shadows that seemed to shift and bend, almost imperceptibly, like the roads she had whispered about. Even as I walked to my car, I could hear it, or thought I could. The faintest whisper carried by the night air, teasing the edge of perception. Wait, I told myself it was my imagination, exhaustion, sleep deprivation. The mind plays tricks. But I knew it wasn't imagination. I drove home slowly, glancing in the rearview mirror at the empty streets. Every intersection, every curve felt subtly wrong, as though I were following an invisible pattern that only I could perceive. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant hum of traffic felt like an echo of her presence. And I realized fully that the end of shift didn't mean the end of her voice. It never ended. Because Dispatcher 392 didn't exist. But the calls did. The instructions did. The warnings did. And now I knew the truth. She had been here all along. Not on the line, not in the logs, not in any ordinary sense, but in the space between, the silence between shifts, the pause between breaths, the shadow behind the monitors. And when the line rang again, when the number flashed on the console, I would answer. because I had no choice. The end of the shift wasn't the end at all. It was just the beginning. Fog always has a way of changing a place, doesn't it? Making familiar roads feel unfamiliar, softening the edges of everything you think you know. That night it was thick, clinging to the asphalt like damp wool, hiding the painted lines and the occasional reflector. I remember thinking as I eased my cruiser along the shoulder that it was too quiet. Not the normal kind of quiet that comes with empty highways, but the kind that presses down, filling your ears with nothing until you start to hear your own heartbeat. We'd been on the late patrol shift for a few hours. Officer Daniels beside me, calm as ever, coffee cup in hand, his eyes scanning the road through the mist. I liked riding with him. He had this steadiness, a rhythm that made even the longest nights feel manageable. We joked about the small things, another abandoned car, a runaway deer, the usual city outskirts nonsense. But tonight, the fog made everything feel like it was holding its breath. The call came in on the radio, a speeding vehicle somewhere ahead. Not unusual, not alarming, just routine. But when we finally spotted the car, headlights cutting through the fog like knives, my stomach clenched. It was moving too smoothly, too. Deliberate. Daniels nodded at me, and we fell into formation, lights flashing, sirens low and steady. The driver didn't slow down. Not immediately. Not until the dash cam caught something that made the air feel heavier. Behind the speeding car, the fog seemed to shiver, and through the haze, lights appeared. Flickering lights, but not from vehicles, not from street lamps. They hovered, moving in ways that defied physics. Smooth arcs, jerky hops, patterns that made no sense. My stomach dropped the moment I noticed them. Daniels leaned closer to the mic. Weird, huh? His voice was casual, but I could hear the tension under it. He's seen a lot in his years on the force, and if he sounded uneasy, I knew something was wrong. I nodded, gripping the wheel tighter. Yeah, weird. My own voice sounded wrong in the quiet of the cruiser. Too loud, too hollow. We pulled the vehicle over on the shoulder. The fog pressed in on all sides, muffling sound, softening the distant hum of traffic. The driver's car idled silently, brake lights painting the mist a dull red glow. I stepped out first, flashlight sweeping over the hood, the front tires, the license plate. Everything was normal. Too normal. No sign of panic, no sign of distraction. Just the car, waiting. And the lights, still flickering behind it. I motioned Daniels out, and we approached slowly, keeping a careful eye on the dashboard camera. Nothing about the driver suggested a threat, yet the air felt wrong. My skin prickled, the hair on my neck standing straight. The fog curled around our ankles, wet and heavy, and I swear I could hear it whisper. Not words, not voices, just a low, sibilant hiss that tickled the back of my mind. The driver rolled down the window, a man, mid-30s, tired eyes, hands trembling slightly on the wheel. He smiled faintly, polite but nervous. Evening, officers. I cleared my throat, trying to sound normal. Do you know why we pulled you over? He nodded. Speeding? I lost track in the fog. His voice shook, and I could see his knuckles pale around the steering wheel. I glanced back again. The lights. Now they were moving closer, not following the vehicle, but gliding alongside, always just in the corner of the dash cam's lens. Not a reflection. Not headlights. Not drones. Something else. Something alive. Daniels took the lead, flashlight pointed at the driver, voice calm but firm. License and registration, please. The man fumbled with his wallet, handing over the documents. I noticed his hands tremble more than necessary. His eyes flicked constantly to the rearview mirror, where the lights danced through the fog, floating unnaturally as if aware of our presence. Do you see them? I asked quietly, almost under my breath, not taking my eyes off the moving glow. Daniels shook his head. See what? I swallowed. The lights. Behind your car. There, I didn't finish, because in that moment, one of them flared, brighter than the fog should allow, and a figure seemed to silhouette itself briefly inside the light. Human? I couldn't tell. Nothing about it looked real. My stomach knotted, and I took a step back, trying to convince myself it was my eyes playing tricks, fog refracting the streetlights. But Daniels had noticed, too. His jaw tightened. You're imagining things. No, I said, my voice sharper now. Look! The lights flickered again. One hovered just above the ground, then darted up, disappearing into the fog, leaving nothing but a vague, shimmering afterimage that made my stomach churn. My hand shook on the flashlight. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. The man in the car noticed too. His eyes widened, panic rising. I don't see anything. His voice wavered. I'm not imagining it? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. No, you're not imagining it. There's something behind your car. Lights, moving, floating. He swallowed hard, shifting uncomfortably. I thought it was just fog. Reflections. Daniels and I exchanged a look. We'd both been on calls, seen strange things before, but nothing like this. This wasn't a glitch or an animal or a mechanical failure. It felt intelligent. A presence. Watching. Waiting. I tried to focus on the practical. Sir, please stay in the car. Don't move! We're going to run your license and registration and then another flare. Brighter this time. Closer. I wanted to step back, to retreat to the cruiser, but my legs felt frozen. The dash cam caught it all. The floating lights, the shimmer in the fog, the sudden distortion that made the air itself seem to ripple. Daniels spoke slowly, almost whispering. I don't like this. Let's finish this quickly. The man's hands were shaking so badly that I had to watch him closely, ready to intervene if he panicked. But before I could make a move, one of the lights shot past his window, close enough that I swear it bent the fog around it, leaving a trail like heat waves over asphalt. His face went pale and he whispered, It's right there. I can feel it. I tried to reassure him. You're safe. Stay calm. But even as I said it, I felt the fog shift around me, a faint pressure like breath on my neck. The hair on my arms stood up again. My flashlight flickered. The dash cam picked up a distortion that wasn't real, a figure hunched, moving impossibly fast. Just beyond the glare of the lights, Daniels called over the radio for backup. But even through the headset, the static felt wrong, crooked, pulsing in rhythm with my own heartbeat. The driver's lips trembled. Please, just let me go. I don't know what's happening. I swallowed hard. We have to run your info. Just a minute. That's all. As I typed in the license plate, the fog seemed to condense behind the car. The lights coalesced, forming shapes that almost resembled people, but only almost. Too tall, too thin, too fluid. And then, for a brief second, I thought one of them turned to look directly at me. A chill ran down my spine. Daniels was speaking, voice low, tense. We need to finish this now. Move. I nodded, but my hands shook as I typed. The dash cam captured it all. The figures in the fog, the lights darting unnaturally, hovering, circling, always just beyond clarity. I wanted to tell myself it was a trick of the camera, a quirk of the fog. But the way they moved, it wasn't random. It was deliberate, watching us, testing us. Finally, the information came back clean. No warrants, no alerts. The man's eyes were wide, staring past me into the mist, and I almost envied his ignorance. He didn't see what we did. Not fully. Not yet. I gestured for him to drive slowly ahead out of the pull of the fog. His car rolled forward, brake lights dimming into the mist, and then I looked back. The lights followed. Not the car, not the road, but us. Hovering, shifting, floating in ways that defied everything I knew about physics. One lingered just long enough for me to see a faint silhouette inside it. Human, but wrong. Not alive, not dead. Something in between. I blinked, and it was gone. Daniels broke the silence. We get back to the cruiser! Now! We did, both of us unnervingly silent, the hum of the engine filling the empty space. We watched the fog swallow the car and the lights behind it. When we radioed in, dispatch reported nothing unusual, just a normal traffic stop, a speeding car, nothing more. But we knew better. Back at the precinct, reviewing the dash cam footage, it was the same. Lights floating, flickering unnaturally behind the vehicle, shapes bending the fog like they were part of it, not just passing through it. Daniels and I stayed quiet, because what could you say about something that wasn't supposed to exist? Something that had no name and no explanation. The night ended with no arrests, no reports, no follow-ups. Just us staring at screens, wondering if we had seen what we had just seen, and realizing we couldn't unsee it. The road outside returned to normal the next day. The fog lifted. The sun hit the asphalt and the lanes were clear. No floating lights, no unnatural figures, just another stretch of highway, quiet and ordinary. But I remembered. I remembered the way the fog pressed against the car, the shimmer in the dash cam, the silhouette that had stared at me, and I knew deep down that the fog would return, that the lights would return, that the shapes behind them would still be waiting, not for anyone else, but for us, the ones who had seen them, the ones who had acknowledged them. Every patrol night after, I couldn't help glancing at the fog, wondering if we were about to drive past the same impossible lights, the same unnatural shapes. Even now, thinking back, I can feel it. The pressure of those figures in the fog, just out of reach, hovering between reality and something else entirely. Somewhere behind that speeding car, beyond the normal laws of the road, they were waiting, and I know when the fog thickens, they'll appear again, watching, testing, always just at the edge of what we can see. I remember the man's hands first, not his face, not his voice, his hands. They were shaking when I walked up to the driver's window, pale under the red and blue wash of the patrol lights. He was gripping the steering wheel so tight, I thought he'd snap it clean off. I'd pulled him over for speeding through fog so thick you could barely see the lines on the road. It was just after midnight on a stretch of Route 19 that locals call the Cut. It's one of those roads where headlights seem to die halfway, through the air, the kind of place where even your own voice sounds wrong when you speak. "License and registration, sir?" I said, keeping my tone calm. The man looked up, eyes wide and glossy. He looked about 40, though the dark made it hard to tell. His mouth was trembling when he spoke. "They're following me," he said. "Please, don't leave me here alone." I frowned. "Who's following you?" He shook his head like he was afraid saying their name might make them appear. "Them," he said again. "They're in the fog." His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. At first, I thought he might be drunk or high. People say all sorts of things when they're scared of getting a ticket. But the longer I looked at him, the more I realized he wasn't just scared. He was terrified. He slid his license through the crack in the window, keeping his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. I followed his gaze, expecting to see another car's headlights. But there was nothing, just fog. My partner, Ruiz, came up beside me. "Everything all right?" she asked quietly. The man startled at her voice. You shouldn't stand there," he said. "They don't like when people stand there." Ruiz gave me a look, the kind that said another one of those nights. She was newer on the force than me, but she'd already learned that weird things happen out on the Cut. Still, I could tell she was uneasy. I stepped a little closer to the window. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" He hesitated, then said, "My name doesn't matter. Just don't let them get me." That's when I noticed his phone on the passenger seat. The screen was cracked, but still glowing. He had a map open, some kind of GPS tracker, but the blue dot was flickering. It kept jumping forward, then back again, like it couldn't decide where it was. And then it froze completely. I don't know why, but I leaned closer. The screen didn't show a route anymore. It showed a single message in white letters against the black background. "Stop." That's all it said. The man's breathing grew shallow. "They don't like movement," he whispered. "They watch the ones who move." I took a step back, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Who's watching, sir?" He didn't answer. He just turned his head slightly, eyes darting to something over my shoulder. I turned too, but there was nothing there, just fog swirling in the faint glow of our headlights. It wasn't even windy, but the fog was moving, twisting like it had a pulse. Ruiz clicked her flashlight on, sweeping the beam into the mist. "Sir," she said, "we don't see anyone out here." The man's voice was hoarse now. "That's because you're not supposed to." I remember the way he said it. Flat, almost resigned. Something shifted in the fog then. Just a flicker of darker shape low to the ground. Maybe a trick of the light, maybe not, but I swear it looked like something crouching. Ruiz must have seen it too, because she lowered her flashlight, her hand drifting toward her holster. I told her quietly, "Stay calm. Probably a deer." But I didn't believe it. I walked back to the patrol car, leaving her with the driver. As I got in, I radioed dispatch. Unit 14 to base, traffic stop on Route 19, requesting backup, I said. A long pause. Then static. No reply. I tried again, adjusting the frequency. Still nothing but static, like the signal was being swallowed. I checked the clock on the dash. 37 a.m. That was weird. Because I could have sworn it had been 12:37 when we first pulled the guy over. The seconds ticked, but the minute hand didn't move. I blinked. It didn't make sense. When I looked back up, the fog had thickened so much that Ruiz and the car were just shadows. I turned on the high beams, and for a second, I thought I saw movement behind the suspect's car. Something gliding, almost human-shaped, but stretched wrong. And then Ruiz's voice came through my radio, distorted and quiet. "Don't move. They're right." It cut out. I jumped out of the cruiser and ran toward her, shouting her name. When I reached the car, she was standing by the driver's side, frozen. The man was staring straight ahead, unblinking, whispering something under his breath. Ruiz didn't look at me when she spoke. Her voice was trembling. "Did you see them?" I started to ask what she meant, but then the man's whispering got louder. I leaned closer to hear. He was counting. 1, 2, 3. And with every number, the fog around us seemed to close in tighter. By the time he reached 5, I could barely see the front of his car. "Stop counting," I said, trying to sound firm. "Sir, stop!" He turned to me, and for a split second his face didn't look right. His mouth kept moving, but the sound was delayed like an echo out of sync with reality. "They're already here," he said. Then he screamed, not a normal scream. It was broken, like it came from somewhere deep in his throat and kept looping, replaying the same few seconds. His body jolted, shaking as the sound went on and on. Ruiz reached for the door handle, but I stopped her. Something told me not to open it. When I looked through the glass again, he wasn't screaming anymore. His face was slack, mouth open, eyes rolled back. But I swear, his reflection in the glass was still moving. It blinked. The real man didn't. That was when the fog shifted again. It rolled up over the hood of the car, swirling between us. Shapes formed in it, too many legs, too many faces. I could hear whispers, overlapping like static. Then everything went silent. No fog, no whispers. Just the sound of the engine idling. Ruiz was gone. I looked around, shouting her name, scanning the roadside, the trees, the ditch. Nothing. No footprints, no sound. The driver's door creaked open, empty. The car keys were still in the ignition, engine running, headlights on. The driver's phone was still glowing on the seat. Same screen, same single word, "Stop." I picked it up. The second I did, the headlights flickered and the dash clock jumped to 12:38. That's when dispatch finally came through. Clear, calm, normal. Unit 14, status check. "You've been off comms for nearly 40 minutes. 40 minutes. I stood there on the road, holding the phone, the air perfectly still again. My voice barely worked when I replied. 10-4, I said. We're fine. But I knew that was a lie, because when I got back in the cruiser, Ruiz's notebook was on the passenger seat. Open. On the last page, written in her neat, blocky handwriting, was a single line. They said they'd stop following once I knew who they were. And underneath that, smeared into the paper like a fingerprint, was fog. Cold, damp fog that shouldn't have been there. I didn't go back on patrol for 2 nights after that stop. They called it mandatory rest, but it felt more like isolation. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the fog rolling in again, thick and heavy, swallowing everything, and Ruiz. She never came back. They said she probably wandered off in the confusion, that she got lost, maybe even fell into one of the drainage canals. But I knew that wasn't true, because I saw what was in that fog, and it wasn't human. When they finally cleared me to return, I took the same car, Unit 14. No one else wanted it. They said the dash cam feed was corrupted, but I wanted to see it for myself. It was late again, almost the same hour, 12:30 a.m., when I parked at the edge of the cut. The road looked different now, quieter, too still. The air had that heavy, metallic taste again. I sat there for a while, just listening to the static hum of the radio, and then I reached over, pulled the old memory card from the dash cam slot, and loaded it into the onboard screen. At first, it showed what I remembered, the speeding car cutting through fog, Ruiz's flashlight, the man's trembling hands. Then, around the point where I lost connection with dispatch, the footage began to distort. The screen flickered, the sound warped, and then the timestamp froze at 12:37 a.m., just like that night. I leaned closer, and that's when I noticed the rear camera had been recording. 2. I switched to the feed. The view was clear for the first few seconds, just darkness and fog lit by our flashing lights. But then something shifted in the mist, far behind the patrol car. A shape. At first I thought it was a tree swaying, but it was moving against the wind, slow, deliberate steps. It wasn't walking, it was pacing. It had no clear edges, just a long, uneven shadow that rose and fell like smoke trapped in a human shape. I paused the footage. My hands were shaking. Ruiz's reflection flickered in the glass beside me, frozen mid-step as she approached the driver's car. Behind her, the fog was bending. I pressed play again. The thing in the rear view moved closer. The lights from the patrol car caught it in flashes, and for just a second it looked like it had arms, too long, too thin. They hung in front of it, dragging through the fog like a curtain. And then, suddenly, it stopped moving, just stood there, in the dark. The timestamp on the screen started to glitch. 12:37, 12:37, 12:37, over and over. My own voice came through the audio. Unit 14 to base. And then the thing leaned forward. It wasn't supposed to have a face, but somehow I knew it was looking at me. The radio crackled with static. Then, something else. A voice. Not Ruiz's, not mine. It whispered, almost gently, "Don't look behind you." The air in the patrol car felt suddenly wrong, thick, pressing against my chest. I paused the video and turned the radio volume down. But the whisper didn't stop. It was coming from the speakers. I reached for the power switch, then froze. In the rearview mirror, through the faint red-blue glow of the lights, the fog was beginning to thicken again. I wasn't imagining it. I twisted around in my seat, staring out the back window. The road was empty, but in the far edge of the headlights I saw something pale flash by, too tall to be a person, too silent to be real. I turned back to the monitor. The recording had started playing on its own. Now the shape was closer. It was almost against the bumper. The fog rippled around it like heat waves off asphalt. Every few seconds, it flickered. There, then gone, there again. And each time, it was closer. The microphone was picking up a low, rhythmic sound, like breathing, not through the speaker, through the car. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the mic was catching feedback from the engine, maybe moisture was interfering with the playback, but my heart didn't believe that. Because when I leaned closer to the speaker, the sound lined up with my pulse. Every inhale, every exhale, perfect sync. And then I heard my own voice again on the recording, clear, terrified. Ruiz. "Where are you?" But I never said that, not out loud. I remembered what I did say that night. 10-4. "We're fine." But the video showed me whispering Ruiz's name over and over, my eyes darting to the rear window. The thing in the fog was already there, almost touching the glass. I stopped the playback. I couldn't take it anymore. I ejected the memory card, tossed it into the glove box, and tried to breathe. But then I saw something else on the dash display, an alert flashing red. Rear camera recording. Active AI hadn't turned it on. I checked the rearview mirror. The screen showed live footage now, and there it was again, tall, shapeless, pacing. It stayed at the very edge of the light, like it knew where visibility ended. I turned the car off. The headlights died, plunging the road into blackness. For a few seconds, everything was silent. Then I heard it. Light footsteps in the gravel behind the car. Not fast, just steady, like someone pacing in circles. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. When I finally reached for my flashlight, I noticed the fog outside wasn't drifting anymore. It was pulling back, like something was pushing it aside. And then, for the briefest moment, I saw it. Tall, uneven limbs bending at impossible angles. A head that wasn't a head, more like a fold of darkness wrapped in skin, and underneath it, 2 faint pinpricks of red light, eyes that weren't glowing, but reflecting like animal eyes do. I blinked. Gone. I started the engine, threw the car into drive, and peeled out of there, gravel spraying against the fenders. I didn't stop until I reached the station. When I parked, I noticed something on the windshield, a smear, long, thin streaks, dragging down the glass, like fingers. I told myself it could have been tree branches, condensation, anything else. But deep down, I knew better. Inside the station, I went straight to the night supervisor and told him what happened. He looked tired, like he'd already heard enough ghost stories for one shift. He took my report without saying a word, just typing it into the log. Then he said quietly, "You should see this." He pulled up the feed from the station's security cameras, the ones that cover the parking lot. It showed me pulling up in Unit 14, headlights flashing. I got out of the car, ran inside. But as I disappeared through the station door, the feed kept rolling. Behind the patrol car, the fog began to gather again, and there, standing perfectly still in the mist, was a tall, featureless figure. It wasn't pacing this time. It was watching the building. The timestamp froze at 12:37 a.m., and then the feed went black. The supervisor stared at the screen, his face pale. "You said this was from tonight?" he asked. I nodded. He shook his head slowly, and for the first time since I'd known him, his voice cracked when he spoke. "That's impossible," he said. "That footage is from the same night Ruiz went missing." I looked back at the monitor. The fog was frozen mid-motion, a still frame of something that shouldn't exist. And behind the car, barely visible in the distortion, were 2 faint red reflections. 2 eyes. Waiting. That was the last time I drove Unit 14. But sometimes when I'm out on patrol in another car, I'll glance in the rearview mirror, and every now and then, just for a second, I swear I see something pacing behind the fog bank, something tall, shapeless, and patient, like it's still waiting for me to stop. It started with a routine dispatch. At least that's what we all thought. Unit 14 and Ruiz were called back to the cut. Same stretch of fog-choked road, same deserted lane. And now, the report. An abandoned vehicle idling with its doors open, no one inside. I felt a pit open in my stomach the moment I heard it. Not fear exactly. Something heavier. Resignation. That creeping sense that whatever had begun 2 nights ago wasn't finished yet. When we arrived, the fog was thick, thicker than I'd ever seen it. Headlights barely penetrated 20 feet. The asphalt gleamed under the moisture, dark and slick. The car was there, exactly as reported. Engine running, doors wide open, empty. But there was something else. Something almost imperceptible. Like the air itself was vibrating. I could hear static on the radios. Faint whispers under the hum of the engine. "Unit 14 to dispatch, we've arrived on scene," I said, voice steadier than I felt. Static. Then, overlapping it, a voice. Not ours, not human, soft, urgent. "Do not look back." Ruiz froze beside me. She's never been the kind to lose composure, but her face was pale, her hands trembling. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded, but I didn't answer. I had no words that could make sense of what we were hearing. I approached the vehicle cautiously, flashlight sweeping over the interior. Empty seats, a dashboard glowing softly in the mist. The engine purred like a living thing, waiting. I leaned closer to check the back seat. Nothing. Then the whisper came again. "Do not look back." It was closer this time. Almost directly behind us, I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing but fog. But something in my chest told me it wasn't nothing. We circled the car, scanning, listening. Every shadow looked like a shape, every rustle in the trees like movement. Then I noticed the radios. Both of them, handheld and mounted, were glowing faintly, static buzzing over their speakers. And over that, the whisper again. Do not look back. My pulse quickened. It wasn't just an echo of fear. It was a command. Ruiz stepped closer to the car, trying to get a look at the license plate. That's when I noticed the tires. The car hadn't moved, but the prints leading to it were fresh, leading into the fog. No prints leaving. Nothing had entered from the outside. Nothing had left, and yet it had moved. I swallowed. My voice cracked when I spoke. Whoever was driving, they're not here. Ruiz nodded. But the car, it's like they just vanished. I leaned against the hood, staring at the windshield. My reflection wavered in the fogged glass. For a second, it looked wrong. Longer, thinner, shadows stretching where they shouldn't. The whispers intensified. Now, overlapping the words, there was another sound. My own voice, faint but unmistakable, repeating phrases I hadn't said. Do not look back. Do not look back. Do not! I stumbled backward, heart hammering. Ruiz grabbed my arm. Her grip was ice. I swallowed, trying to force reason into my mind. Cars get abandoned. People leave for reasons. It's late. Maybe a driver ran off panicked. But I knew. I knew that wasn't it. I picked up one of the radios, pressed the button. Static. Then my voice. My voice saying, do not look back. I dropped it. Ruiz took a step toward the passenger side. We need to check. The whisper cut her off, louder, urgent. Do not look back. It wasn't coming from the radios now. It was all around us, from the fog, from the air, from inside our own heads. I froze. My brain couldn't process it. My stomach lurched. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Then I realized the fog wasn't just mist. It was moving with purpose, curling around the car, circling us, like it had shape, like it had intent. I tried to speak, tried to call out. My mouth wouldn't work. Ruiz's hand was still on my arm. I could feel her trembling. The whispering became a chorus. Not just one voice now, but many, layered, overlapping, imperceptibly faster, closer. And then I saw it. In the corner of the patrol car's rear view. A shadow, tall, elongated, moving just behind the fog, pacing slowly, deliberately, limbs bending at wrong angles, not human. I couldn't tear my eyes away. The whispers intensified, now repeating our thoughts. Do not look back. Do not look back. I turned my head only a fraction instinctively. Nothing. But the static on the radio hissed louder. My own voice screamed, distorted and warped, repeating, do not look back. I lunged for the door, trying to get away. Ruiz grabbed me. We have to call it in, she shouted. The radios both went silent. For a second, the fog stopped moving. The air went still. Then I heard it behind us. Footsteps, dragging, uneven, slow, patient. Right on the edge of hearing. Like it was savoring our fear. I couldn't move. My chest ached. My throat burned. The whisper came again. Not from the radio this time. From behind us. From the space where reality ends. Do not look back, Ruiz screamed, pulling me down. The headlights flickered. The engine coughed. And then the car doors slammed shut. All at once. Both of them. We bolted. Ran into the fog, blind, lungs burning. Behind us, the whispers didn't stop. The footsteps didn't stop. We reached the edge of the road where the fog thinned. My mind tried to rationalize. Panic, hallucination, sleep deprivation. But even as I told myself that, I could feel it. The presence. Watching. Waiting. We got back to the station. Both of us soaked in sweat, hearts racing, silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. The supervisor met us at the door. He didn't say anything at first, just led us into the office. Reports? He asked. I handed over the radios, trembling. The static still faintly whispered, do not look back. He listened, nodded slowly. You're not the first, he said. I looked at him. Not the first what? He didn't answer. Just pulled out the log. Date, time, patrol unit, description. Abandoned vehicle, driver missing. No footprints. Radio interference. Fog anomalous. He tapped the line. Same call last week. Same pattern the week before that. Month before that. Every time, same instructions, do not look back. Same area, same road. My stomach turned. He looked at me, eyes serious. Some things patrols don't explain. Some things don't like being seen. And if you really look, he didn't finish the sentence. I knew what he meant. That night, I lay awake at home, lights on, doors locked, thinking about the fog, the pacing shadow, the whispers repeating in my own voice. And I realized it didn't matter if we left. It didn't matter if we changed shifts, changed cars, even left the force entirely, because the moment we heard it, saw it, felt it, it followed, quietly, patiently, waiting for the next lapse, and I knew, deep down, that for the driver of that car, it had never stopped. Somewhere in the fog, it was still pacing, and it would never stop.